Warning, this podcast contains scenes of explicit nonsense and lore.
Previously on the Resident Evil podcast.
It was all very on the nose, a lot of it, and as I said, I was quite exhausted by the time Hunk turned up.
Nick, will you leave the work experience boys alone? You know, we're given a big task. Come on. And for me, as an arachnophobic, you can fuck your Titan spinner in VR. Thank you very much. And I felt like, Resident Evil fucked me over again.
The remakes are canon versions only, and that the OGs are not.
And then you release some lickers out of a tank, and then all of a sudden they're fighting each other, and you're like, yeah!
The Resident Evil Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 113 of the Resident Evil Podcast. More welcome than the announcement of a Dead Aim sequel, but more realistic than Wesker's world domination plans. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune. I'll be annoyed if there's no aquatic BOWs in the next game. Let's see who's joining us today. He can save Gotham, just not Raccoon City, it seems. It's the Batman.
Hello there.
He's been around long enough that he's being remade and voiced by Jeff Sheen. It's Stars Tyrant.
Hello.
He's been afflicted, rotten, and has a crimson and a blister for a head. It's Romby.
Yeah, though.
And he's feeling a little bit left out that he didn't get an Easter egg callback in Requiem. It's George Trevor.
Good evening, but I'm featuring in the game we're talking about.
Coming up in today's podcast, we had plans, ladies and gentlemen, so many plans, but we've all been diverted to Paris as the Code Veronica remake gets its reveal at the Summer Games Fest. Join us as we dissect that 4-minute presentation discussing all our hopes and fears for the 4th remake in 8 years. We also have all the news, and we're going to be finished with a quiz, so let's start with that news. First bit of news does come from Requiem, which is exciting. Leon Must Die Forever mode is now out as free DLC for all platforms that it's on. I think it's gone down quite well. It's quite fun, quite challenging. I have personally not played it. These things don't really float my boat, but has anyone had a go?
My boat was not floated either. It's not my thing at all. I've not played it either. This is good content so far.
I said I can't help either.
I almost wasn't even going to unmute my mic. I just ditto what Batman said. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're completely reliant on Sean to play it. Come on, Sean.
I usually give these modes a try just to see what they're like, but I just haven't had the time. But I did want to give it a shot. I had a quick look at the content, like what it was, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. And, I mean, for free content, you can't complain if you're looking for something more action oriented. And to be fair as well, the one thing that appeals to me about it is not maybe so much the mode, but the gun combat and can be quite fun in Requiem and Leon's like running around and doing like random headshots and all that sort of stuff. And it's quite an enjoyable feel to it. So, getting that into a fast-paced mode, I can definitely see the appeal for some people.
Have you played this, Sean? We're reliant on you of playing this mode.
You know what? It's not bad. I don't think it's the mode anybody would have wanted. I've probably put a couple of hours into it now across the PC and the PS5 versions. It's all right. You can tell it's not had a great deal of dev time associated with it. There's some strange little quirks, like the fact that even though it's a mini game and you have to play through a series of levels with it, it's got like a branching pathway and you can choose which level you want to go next and things like that. But as you're playing through them, and they're all based on like Leon's set pieces in the campaign, but the problem is you'll still get like Sherry talking over comms like it's still part of the campaign. They haven't like taken all those bits out. It's almost like it just literally plays like a slightly remixed version of the actual level from the campaign. So it's a bit sort of bodged together, but as Rob just says, the gameplay loop of Leon's combat is quite satisfying. It allows you to just have a disposable mode where you can just think, I want to play a bit of Requiem, I want to do Leon's combat, I can just do this. It's okay, it's not Mercs. I'd like to think something like Mercenaries is still coming along, because I just can't believe that you would have such a colourful cast of characters like Requiem has, from your Xeno, your Gideon to the Commander and Sherry and Alyssa, and not put them in some form of like raid mode mercenaries minigame. So I still think it's a massive missed opportunity in terms of like I say in inverted commas, a battle mode, if that's all this is. If this is all Requiem's version of a battle mode is, it's going to be really disappointing in the long run, I think. But it's fine. It's okay for short bursts, but it does get old quite quickly, and there's not a lot to keep replaying it for.
The history of DLC, like if you look back, we've talked about there wasn't a lot for Village and so forth, and a lot of this had to do with the timelines that Capcom were working on. Everything's been delayed, and Requiem was one of those titles that also had an impact of delay. And obviously now they've got this, what we're going to be talking about, the mainstay as a reveal, and I think the idea is that they will try and get as much DLC out for Requiem as they can, because it's been such a big success for them that they would rather maintain that. So I think in this case we're going to get lucky, and I think more stuff. I mean, we know that a story DLC is planned. We don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm expecting there will be other DLC content, whether or not it's paid or not, that gets pushed out in the next year or so. I think had they had the extra year that they originally wanted to have for Requiem, because in theory it was supposed to be out the year earlier, and the original plans pre-COVID, pre all these other delays, reshuffling and reworking of games and so forth, I think we would have definitely seen a lot more already scheduled, but because of like compressed times and projects going on. And I guess that's one of the other things we can moan about in regards to remakes, is that it does take some resources away from being able to put another team on doing DLC because they're working on a different title, which is a good bad thing. Personally, I don't think that it's not one of those ones where it's like, oh, it's budget or money or time that's been taken away that could have been used, but also you're still getting content. It's a choice between one or the other. Do you have a development team working on a production fully, be it remake, be it an original title? Doesn't really matter in this context, but it means that's not a team that can be working on a DLC. So you have to have the same team that worked on the main game doing the DLC, and they can't do it really concurrently. So we end up with Requiem being finished, and then they've gone on to do DLC content straight away, but it means it takes time. And otherwise, as Sean's just alluded to, you get a situation where they've pushed this out probably as quickly as they can, but it's been shortcutted wherever they can as well to make it work. So I think in the long run, we're going to see way more content from this game than we did for, say, Village or anything else, or recently. More like they want RE7 levels of DLC, kind of. They don't have the plan for it.
Would you say it's a little bit short-sighted, or would you just put it down to the sort of more truncated development time on Requiem because of all like the resets and the redos of it? Nakanishi, if you go back to like his work on 7, they had this roadmap planned with all the band footage and Not a Hero. Obviously, that got completely reworked, and hence why it was delayed. But they still had like a roadmap as such, whereas you get the impression that the Requiem post-launch content that they're now adding is a reaction due to how successful it had been. Like, if it had only sold like 1 million copies, does that mean there potentially would not have been any further content, and we'd have just gone straight on to the next title? I don't know, it just seems awfully short-sighted for a series that does support its games reasonably well, with battle modes and unlockables and things like that.
True. I think there's a middle ground. I think we probably would have been expected that they would have been focused on at least one story DLC, kind of like we got with Village. But yeah, beyond that, it is an unusual thing. And I think the impact is, as I said, this splitting between remakes and stuff, and the expectations of how turnaround times between titles, because the focus is cannibalizing time. It's not the development thing. Because the thing about 7, they had the time because there wasn't anything else on the schedule that was due anytime soon after 7's release. It was its own window. The next thing that was due was supposed to be the Resident Evil 2 remake. That ended up getting pushed back about a year because it was originally supposed to be 2018, not 2019, because of the redevelopment plans. So it's like one of these interesting cases where, because now they've got other remakes on the board, they are worried about cannibalizing their own tail on the new game. So Requiem comes out and they're like, well, we do have plans for DLC. It takes time. We've only got a certain amount of development time, but we can only get so much out in a year. But we've also got another game out in a year's time, roughly, from this Requiem title. So we've got to make sure it fits that window. And I think we're all well aware of this is not the only remake that's currently on the boil. So this only makes it exacerbates it further, because at this stage I'm expecting you'll get this remake in a year's time, and then the year after that will be another remake. So they don't have a lot of window and they don't have a lot of trust in it. But I think they need to get into that trust level of just going, the audience will still find the DLC. It doesn't have to be the newest thing on the block and the only game on the block for the DLC to still land. And I'm not meaning to go ahead of this, but the reaction you hear at the SGF when the trailer is revealed as to what it is, you hear that audience reaction to a title, and it's the same reaction you heard to Requiem that you heard this time. It's more about what it means as a franchise, that they know they're going to get quality, they know they're going to get this particular type of gameplay. So there's this thing where they could actually just really go, right, we're confident in this DLC, we'll just market it as DLC, even if we've got a new title out. Still content. They still update Monster Hunter, while other Monster Hunter games have been out for a while. Like, I don't see why they can't apply this to Resident Evil as well. Like, it's not like people aren't just going to go back and go, oh, I bought that digital copy of Requiem. It's still in. I can re-download it and reinstall it and get the DLC, even though, I played Code Veronica, the remake of Code Veronica now. Like, it's not going to stop people going back to an old game. And the legacy sales of the titles as well should put confidence into it. So I think it's a mindset switch that has to happen, that they can still put out DLC even if they've got a newer game title or a remake out, because it's not the be-all, end-all of it. You can still convince people to go back. I would love to see more DLC content, like in the vein of 7, having a couple of quite solid story-esque or story-related DLCs and then like a bunch of fun mini games. Whether or not they go to that extent, I don't know. But yeah, be interesting.
In all honesty, I'm just looking forward to the story DLC, although I would like to see a Mercenaries for Requiem. As Sean said, the cast we've got and the levels as well, especially with East Raccoon City, it's crying out for Mercenaries, I think.
I've never liked the Mercenaries editions that we've got with any of the games, but that just speaks to what I want, in the series. But I mean, I am looking forward to the story DLC, and I'm pleased, I'm heartened that we're getting that, because particularly the early stages of the game, as you heard on the podcast, the main podcast that we did, I really engaged with this more than any recent edition that we've had. So yeah, story DLC, but I've never been interested. Even with 7, I adored 7 and really didn't like a lot of the DLC we got with that, the whole Chris stuff. So yeah, not for me.
Survival unit news. Yes, important news. There's been some updates in everyone's favourite mobile Resident Evil experience. Resident Evil 6 Legends. Piers, Sherry, and Jake are now available to purchase if you so wish.
Nicholas.
Yes, Sean.
So tell me in your non-canon corner brain, if the game is set, what year, please?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I stayed from 98 to 99.
So if how have we got the Raccoon City disaster and adult Sherry?
I don't know.
In the same existence.
The same reason Krauser randomly turned up a couple of updates ago.
I'll tell you what, the canon in this game is a fucking omnishambles, isn't it?
It's all over the place. The interesting part of the update is not necessarily the characters, because I think you got to spend quite a lot of money. I think they're about £10 each, I think, to get them if you so wish. I think they will eventually put it out on the lucky draw thing.
Oh no, you can get them all for free.
Can you?
Pierce is the current character on the try your luck thing. The only 2 characters you have to pay for are Jill and Leon. The rest of them you can get for free, but some of them are a lot easier to get than others.
Right.
But, if you don't have the patience, then yeah, you've got the option to buy them outright.
I still haven't got Barry.
Barry is the easiest one to get. There's an event every week saying rescue Barry, and you just fight the T-103, which is like the weakest tyrant, and you get like 5 Barry tokens.
Oh dear. Okay, I might.
I tell you what, you're a bit of an expert about this, aren't you, John?
John's very good. I've got Lewis. He randomly turned up. I was quite happy to randomly get him.
I get dragged over the fucking hot coals for daring to say that Survivor 2 was an okay arcade experience, and listen to you guys fucking sharing notes about Survival Unit.
I was just sat here as a listener, just like muttering to myself, like, John, I'm just obviously being so aware how the lore is so close to your heart, John, and you're playing this a lot. I don't get it. There's no lore in there, is there?
It is.
I've logged in for 186 days in a row.
I want to get a psychologist on the show. There's something behind this. I want to know why.
Addiction. That's what it's called, GT. Addiction.
As part of the recent update, there's also a new one-player little campaign that lasts about 20 minutes. So in addition to your story as the operative, as you delve deeper into the mansion, which is quite exciting, the plot thickens with the operative because there's lots of files you can pick up. And Sean, you'll be very excited to know this. There is a file written that says Remember that one time you hid my key card? Now it's time to make things even. I took the liberty of safely storing the key somewhere inside this picture. You better find it if you want to go home. Ha 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 ha! Right? That locked everyone in the lower levels and sealed them to their fate as zombies. Signed by DF. It's Daniel frickin' Fabron!
You know that I didn't realise. Obviously, as John says, Jill is the paid character, but she actually has like a little FMV video you can watch. It's not very good. It's a very crudely put together FMV sequence, but it does have Jill fighting Thanatos, which I thought was a pretty neat hybrid of Remake 3 fighting Outbreak Thanatos. Was just quite a cool combination I was not expecting to see in a cutscene. So, I'll give it props for showing like an RE multiverse, if you will.
It's also added voice acting as well for the prologue section, so it's brought back Claire's remake voice actor, Marvin's remake voice actor, and a new voice for the operative as well.
I'll tell you what, who needs remakes, when you've got Survival Unit just ticking all the boxes, guys.
Every time Nick's like, in Survival Unit news, my eyes just roll out the back of my head.
The story ends abruptly, waiting for a new update, but the story is likely to end. I hope it's ending going to Saint Vale, which is where there's a big kind of global event that you kind of try and take on that mortem creature. But you can only do that as part of like the big auto rallies that you endure. But hopefully there's a one-player version you can do. That's where I think it's ending.
I was going to say, I'd be interested to know what the player base is still like compared to what it was in its first week or two.
I'm looking forward to the obvious crossover with Mahara Desire.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
That's the next update.
Probably lost half our audience now listening to this.
The curious thing is, though, they've skipped over Resident Evil 5 for some reason. We've had the characters for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
That's true, yeah, I didn't think of that, yeah, we have.
Don't ask me why, but...
Until next time. We have some site news, ladies and gentlemen, very exciting, and I'm going to hand over to the Batman because we have a substantial amount of new translations up on the website. If you head over into the Lore Room, you'll see that there's been some updates. We have from Biohazard 2, the official guidebook and the research on Biohazard 2 Final Edition. That's been fully translated. With Dead Aim, the official website and the official guidebook has been fully translated for your viewing pleasure. And I think the best one, and I don't like to pick favourites from John's work, but I'm going to, is the Biohazard Gun Trial, which celebrated the 5th anniversary of Resident Evil. That's under the 5th anniversary tab. John, did you want to explain more about this amazing gun trial, this real-life competition?
Yeah, so it was done for the 5th anniversary back in 2001 in collaboration with Tokyo Maru, and they actually got 4 real airsoft gun manufacturers in Japan to design and make their own biohazard in-universe gun. And obviously the best one was going to be judged by people within Capcom and Tokyo Maru and the magazine it was featured in, which is called...
Arms
magazine, thank you. So yeah, and there was like a prototype of each of these guns made, and they were all voted on, and they're all quite cool. There's a Samurai Edge model for Forrest Spire. There's new Magnums for Chris and Barry. There's a gun for Jill, one for Rebecca, and yeah, it was quite interesting. There's a little bit of unofficial non-canon lore attached to each one, and Selfish Gene has actually sent me a follow-up article with the results of the competition, so I need to get that translated as well. But yeah, just a curious little thing that I've never seen posted anywhere else.
There's a cool Q&A as well, isn't there, with the firearms design lead, Muneyuku Kotegawa.
Yeah, and I think they ask him questions about, the next anticipated release, which at the time was Resident Evil 0.
Yep.
It was quite funny reading that when he says, I can't tell you anything about the story, but you won't be disappointed.
And the film.
And the film, yeah, of course.
A good read, yeah, good read. That. The last one we did was the research on Biohazard 2 Final Edition. I think that was quite an interesting point because that, rather than like the guidebooks and the websites which usually translated to talk about BOWs and character profiles within the game, the final research book is more to do with the general influences of Resident Evil 2 and where the game creators got their ideas from. So there's lots of references to George Romero, Godzilla, and characters like Mothma for, the Moth BOW and things like that. So it's quite a cool insight into the developers' minds as to what they're thinking of when developing the game. Just shows you how much work went into Resident Evil 2 as well. It's a shame these things aren't produced anymore.
Yeah, definitely. It's very detailed, that book. And there is some good lore as well about the G-Virus in particular and some of the other creatures. But if you really want to dive deep into Resident Evil 2, then the Biohazard 2 guidebook is the one to go for. There's stacks of good stuff in there, developer interviews, and a really detailed timeline, which includes, really obscure events like Chief Irons putting no smoking signs up around the RPD to stop anyone from accidentally finding the red jewel behind the painting in the office.
Nice.
Just little things like that, and it reveals what happened to the secretary after she found out his dirty little secrets. Just really obscure stuff, which was it's really nice to see these kind of things in official print when some people think you just make this stuff up. But yeah, so the lore room was looking a bit dusty, so I thought I'll add some more to it and live up to my title as unofficial World's Lord's Ultimate Grandmaster of Lore.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and there's more to come, so keep an eye out on all our socials, and we'll post them as they drop. Quick thank you to two of our new patrons, Amish Priest and Mark Clapham. Thank you very much for joining. If anyone's interested in Patreon, you can head over to Patreon, either search for the Resident Evil Podcast or the community tab on our website. That'll lead you directly to that. That does finish all the news for now. We now look at the newly announced Resident Evil Veronica, aka Code Veronica Remake.
Oui? Qui est-ce? So, you're the American who called earlier. The sister of the man on the third floor. Ah, welcome to Paris. It's so nice to meet you. It's freezing. Come in. Come in. We don't want you to catch a cold. I hate to say it, but your brother is, well, quite odd. In we go. Oh là là. Mais quelle pagaille. He's made such a mess again. Think, I just cleaned it up a week ago. It's like a boulder rolled through here. Huh? Ah, the delightful biscuit. I'm sure he won't notice if we help ourselves. Oh, I'm so sorry. It must be the maintenance man from this morning. Won't be long. I'll bring some nice coffee to go with the biscuit.
Where to start? There were rumours, strong rumours, before, about I'd say a good couple of weeks before Summer Games Fest dropped. People were saying, there might be something coming. I was quite ambivalent towards it. I thought we were still going to get a little bit more Requiem stuff, but here we are. First out of the bag, first trailer dropped Summer Games Fest, and we see this 4-minute presentation, and instantly you knew it was RE Engine. There's this unique look about the RE Engine games that you could just tell it was first person. Also helps, I think, that the floor of the apartment block is exactly the same as the floor from Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Centre. I think that was a bit of a giveaway, but yeah, this kind of came, I didn't think it came out of the blue. As I said, rumours were rife. People were posting things on Twitter and God knows what, but in a funny sort of way, I'm still surprised that this has happened. And I think what we want to do today is kind of get to grips with what we've seen. We're going to discuss some of the finer points of the trailer, specifically looking at some of the parts of the game other than what I assume is the introductory video, or the opening cutscene, and see what's there, and what can we decipher from that, what's changed, what's staying the same, and quite frankly, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, is this a game that is worthy of a remake? And I don't say that because I dislike it, far from it. In fact, the complete opposite. From a sales point of view, Code Veronica is nowhere near the other games, mainline games, should I say. It's always been very low down. It doesn't have the same provenance, should we say, in the wider gaming community. I think within the Resident Evil community, Code Veronica is very much liked. People have very fond memories. I certainly do, and I'll touch upon them a bit later on. But the wider gaming community, I think this could be a real acid test for Capcom. I don't think they're going to mess it up. I think it's going to be popular, but it'll be interesting just to see where this falls when it's released in 2027. I think we should get some preliminary thoughts from everyone on the team. Let's start with famously anti-Code Veronica man, Batman. No, I'm just joking. John, you're not a huge fan of Code Veronica compared to the other classic entries in the title. What's your preliminary thoughts on the trailer, what you've seen, and the general ethos towards a remake for Code Veronica?
Well, yeah. Code Veronica, to go back to when it first came out, it's not a bad game. I very much enjoy Code Veronica, but it does represent the first time I was disappointed with a Resident Evil game, in the sense that, it was a next generation game at the time. The 3D graphics just didn't look as good or as atmospheric as the pre-rendered backgrounds. It looked very bland. There was a lot of backtracking, but that's besides the point. What was disappointing for me was the story, in the sense that Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 3, there's so much backstory going on before the actual events happen. It really immerses you in what's going on. But Code Veronica, there's absolutely nothing. It just kind of happens. It's 3 months after Raccoon City was destroyed. We never find out what Chris has been up to in that time, really. We don't find out what Claire's been up to. The epilogues from Resident Evil 3 didn't really go anywhere. And you just got that, I'm sorry, Sean, but you've just got that absolutely atrocious intro scene that I still hate to this day. It's awful, where Claire's, she's 19 years old and she's somehow running around the Umbrella building with this attack helicopter destroying it. I hate it, and I'm so glad they've got rid of it. From the little we've seen in this reveal, it looks like the title that's going to be fundamentally remixed and changed the most, and I have no problem with that. The intro where we go to see Chris's apartment, it doesn't even look like Claire's even going to get to the Umbrella building this time. We're not going to have any email from Leon because Claire already knows where Chris is. Where is Chris? Because Chris takes off to rescue Claire in the original. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I've got my ticket for this one, and I'm raring to go on the remake train. As for sales, I don't think there'll be an issue. I think Resident Evil is so stupidly popular at the moment. This will sell like hotcakes, just like the rest of the remakes, because lots of people want to see the return of Claire. This will be the first time we see Chris in the remake engine, or young Chris, I should say. And yeah, I'm not worried about sales. I think it'll sell by the bucket loads. So very intrigued so far. I'm really looking forward to this one, I must say.
Hey, George, I know you're a big Code Veronica fan over the years. One of your defining titles. Where do you sit with this?
Yeah, this game has such a special place in my heart. It's in my top 3 all day long. I drove, to another city to pick it up on the GameCube. I think it was so ahead of its time on the on the Dreamcast when it came out, and I just. Because Batman's absolutely right. Resident Evil just now, the cachet just holds such a huge audience. What a wonderful opportunity to introduce that audience to what made this game so special in the first place, which from this early trailer and other things that Capcom have done in the last decade, I just have no confidence that they're going to bring forward just the aspects of Code Veronica that just made it so, the foreboding, insidious, nastiness of the Ashfords. I mean, I'm so disappointed that, the beginning, they've taken, as a huge Cloverfield fan, they've kind of changed it from, Bruce Willis, Die Hard, to kind of like Miss Marple going through, Chris's apartment, definitely calling out the landlord for, breach of tenancy, nicking Chris's biscuits. No, seriously, I just think what an opportunity. Those aspects that this game kind of shared with Silent Hill. The mental health issues. That extraordinary relationship between the Ashfords. I just don't feel we're going to get any of that. Just the nuances of the game, that really dense gothic atmosphere. It feels to me that it's going to kind of be like a Code Veronica light, and it's going to skip around that again, very much more style over substance. That's what this early trailer is speaking to me, and I just think why, if you're not going to double down on everything that made Code Veronica what it was so special, why would you do a remake of the game? Just do a new game. Give us a new game.
I think you raise a really good point, though, regarding the nuance and the atmosphere of Code Veronica is unique. To this day, I have very fond memories of Code Veronica. It was the first game I was a Resident Evil fan, and the new title was coming out. So I kind of got 1, then 3, then Survivor didn't count in that sense. So at that point, I was fully in as a fan of the series after 3. And I was enviously looking over in the Dreamcast going, that's a Resident Evil game I want to play. So the build-up to September 2001, the excitement of being able to play Code Veronica, for me, was enormous. I was devouring every magazine, every article, and I was rushing down to Game Electronics Boutique to pre-order so I could just get Wesker's Report on DVD. The excitement levels for me were beyond anything, and then loading it up for the first time in the PS2, I was blown away by the game. I thought it was graphically sensational. I know what John's saying. Looking back, it is a little bit blander. It's a little bit browner than in terms of like color palette. But for me, it was just the epitome of everything that survival horror was at that point. And I think I've said it before on the podcast. I have this really weird memory of the moment I just went, oh, we've arrived in next gen. And it was just when you're in the training facility near the beginning and you go on the lift. And I'm so used to lifts and elevators in Resident Evil just being a door down, noise, nothing's moving. And then to see Claire just go in the lift and then physically moving down, the screen moving down, the light pouring in from the different floors as she descends, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And it's such an odd thing to remember. It's so ingrained in my memory. And the soundtrack that accompanied every part of this game, it is without doubt the best overall soundtrack of the classic era. There may be some better tunes in some other games, but overall, and it's just exceptional, and it complements the atmosphere, the macabre nature of the torture rooms and the prison. And I am sorry to say, there is not a cat in hell's chance that Capcom are going to be able to replicate it. But I will caveat that by saying that is a massive, massive pair of nostalgic glasses on for me. And I fully appreciate that view is horrendously biased. And interestingly, when I look back at, say, Resident Evil 4, people have concern, are they going to be able to replicate Resident Evil 4? I just didn't have that nostalgic oomph with Resident Evil 4. So I fully embrace Remake 4. I'd pick it over the OG anytime. This will take a monumental effort for me to be on board with it. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to play as Claire. She's one of my favorites. I'm excited to see what they do with it. But I mean, boy, this game is a hell of an act to follow up on. So good luck, Capcom.
I only just wanted to very quickly add, as someone who particularly back then was so obsessed with the pre-rendered backdrops, and that this idea that the suggestion it's true that it is bland, the environments. What completely dissipates the blandness for me is what you said, Nick. Absolutely right. The soundtrack is just outstanding. No other game, I think, in the series for me almost evokes so much atmosphere through the soundtrack and what it makes you feel. So yeah, I just wanted to add, you're right about the soundtrack, and that for me is what makes the blandness just completely dissipate. You're not even aware of it at all.
Romby, what's your take? What's your preliminary thoughts? Where do you sit?
This is a tough one for me. I think it's pretty clear cut of my history of being on here and in the past that I was not the biggest fan of Code Veronica. I find it a bit of a slog at times. I still enjoyed it. It's a weird love-hate thing. I still enjoy it on some levels. I still think there's bits of it I absolutely think are some of the best of that era. But I also always found it a very long game that I wasn't as engaged with as I was for the PlayStation era titles or the remake of Resident Evil that came after it. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier, which I think is a key impetus, is the fact that like the sales of Code Veronica is historically one of the lowest in the franchise. I think it's somewhere around 3 million copies, which back then the PlayStation 2 one outstripped the sales on the Dreamcast original just because of the install units. And so obviously Capcom made that big impetus choice to move it to the PS2, even though the PS2 version is an inferior version of the game compared to the Dreamcast original, or even the Dreamcast re-release, because in Japan they re-released Code Veronica X. They re-released it in Japan as complete on both platforms, and then eventually obviously later ports to things like the GameCube, which the prices on that are insane if you're trying to find a copy of that these days. And then the HD version, which you can still get if you log into a digital storefront from 15 years ago. But even I have issues with the quality of that. It's much improved, but also degraded in some ways because, well, the HDification is nice to put it running in the MT framework. It also has drawbacks on depth of field focus, and color and lighting is probably not what was originally intended. It does have a tonal shift, which makes it look nicer in some places, but also makes it look weirder in others. And there are ported versions you can play on the PlayStation version for emulation, or Xbox 360 of either the HD version or the original PS2 ported to PS3 and PS4 and PS5, which are not exactly the most ideal ways to play it. So from an access standpoint, a remake kind of of this title makes the most sense. And from a sales standpoint, to get more people engaged in the narrative of Code Veronica that they may never have played or have only ever read about may also be really good. That said, I've always thought that Code Veronica was one of the ones I expected a remake of, and the fact it's taken so long after all these other titles, like I think we've talked about it before, like 4 as a remake to me seems like such more of a gamble than Code Veronica. And it comes from that background that if anyone does any deep diving in the history of Code Veronica, you'll find that there is a lot of material that was left on the cutting room floor, probably the most of maybe any of those titles of the era. Every game has a development cycle where things get added and changed and removed, but Code Veronica had so many ideas that never got implemented because of time, of budget, of like working with a new development platform, of outsourcing, because the original was a labor of love connected of Capcom, of Sega, of Nextech, of like a bunch of different companies coming together to wrangle the best out of the Dreamcast hardware for what was supposed to be such a flagship big profile title, that things didn't get developed the way they intended. And so there's a lot of both content as far as like what was plans with the island, there's narrative stuff that got dropped, and so a remake is quite there's a lot of fertile material that can still be expanded, that would still fit the universe because it was originally planned to be there. And then you add the fact they did go back later and add stuff for Code Veronica X, and they wanted to expand that narrative. So they weren't able to add new content, but they were able to put a bit more of the narrative threads back in. I think there's still plenty that they will come. And I think from that perspective, we will be very interesting and surprised at some of the things I think they're planning to add. Because if they go back to that stuff, and I think they will, as well as reimagining and remixing what was already there, I think there's some really interesting things that could happen. So on that front, I'm excited. I think my expectation is that it's going to be a really great game from a gameplay perspective, and I think it's going to be the reimagining elements that are going to be the controversial things because there are people like yourself, Nick, and Sean, and I'm sure GT as well, that all kind of appreciated the original and love it for what it is and that nostalgia element and so forth. But there's also people like John and myself who are just like, there was bits about that original game I really didn't enjoy at the time, and I'm quite happy to see new versions of. So yeah, that's how I feel from a perspective of seeing the trailer. You're right. You looked at it and I was like, that's RE Engine. Oh my God. And then, if you actually pay attention, you can actually see the building in the background. It's got an umbrella logo on it in the first shot. But it feels very much in tune with the idea of what they did with Requiem, which is like, let's show off some stuff from the game, but it's all going to be very early stuff as far as like the visuals look and where it is in the narrative. So from that perspective, we've got a lot yet to be revealed, and I'm kind of excited to see what that'll be.
50-50 between us. Casting vote, Stars Tyrant. Where do you sit with this?
I don't fucking know, Nick. I don't know. There's no way I can come out of this episode without being the pantomime villain of the podcast again. There's just no way.
Sorry, Sean, I'm going to caveat. People should be angry at John and I for going, we don't like the original more than they would be about anything you have to say about a remake. I think that's fair. We should be the villains of the piece here. Now,
Thank you, Rob, for the support, the much needed support. I'm gonna need a fucking balm after this. Won't I? This is the one that I can from a fundamental point of view, I can understand this one. This would have made more sense than even Remake of 4, because that, as much as I enjoy that as a title, I did always feel, and I still kind of feel to this day, that it was a wholly unnecessary one. This is the one that I think the fans have probably been asking for the longest. It's the one that makes the most sense in terms of availability, because the game, without going into too deep an avenue of this, but its availability is a bit problematic. The availability, it's not available on PC. There's no PC version. The version on the PS5, PS4 is the port of the PS2 version, and if you're in PAL territories, it's a really, really horrendous 50 hertz version of the game. If you're on the Xbox, then you haven't got access to the original version. You've only got the HD remaster. So it kind of makes sense. And from the issues that you guys have talked about, the visuals arguably probably aged some of the worst amongst the series. It was very early sort of 3D. And then the nature of like the backtracking and everything like that, I don't think has aged terrifically well. And it's one of those rare games that you can actually quite easily soft lock yourself out of being able to finish it. So all of these things taken into consideration, I can understand why this is long overdue, to be honest. The fact that this is probably due a remake of sorts. And and I went on record on one of the previous episodes talking about Requiem and how Requiem pulled from the remakes to approach its lore and things like that. How we as a community, as a family, we sit before like a crossroads, and you have to ask yourself what you want from this series, whether you're going to let like the remake thing bother you, or whether you're going to embrace it and try and make it work. And it's all down to the eye of the beholder and that. And I just think I've been fucking kidding myself, because I thought I was prepared for this. It was like gaming's worst kept secret for the last few weeks that at some point during Summer Games Fest, whether it was the state of play or whatever, we're probably going to see Code Veronica, and I was prepared for this for the reasons that I've just said. I kind of understand why it needs to happen, and then the trailer starts, and I just realise I am a hypocrite. It still does fucking bother me so much, and it's only when it's a truly beloved game. Like, I hold Code Veronica to such high esteem. Like, it's as close to Resident Evil 2 as any other game in the series in terms of, like, it's a 10 out of 10 experience for me. I remember all the nostalgia associated with, like, buying a new games console to get, the new Resident Evil Next Gen edition. I love this fucking game before the X edition. The X edition was just the cherry on top. I'm an original Dreamcast one, and I loved it then. I loved everything about it. I love the fact that, yeah, okay, I appreciate aspects of it do get fantastical, and it gets a bit silly, and it gets overboard, but that's part of why I love it. I love the charm of, like you say, Nick, GT, like the macabre nature of the torture dungeons against this sort of more heroic phase of the characters. Like, this was the first time the characters felt like heroes, and I know the intro's nonsense. I know it is, but God, wasn't it just the coolest fucking thing I'd ever seen at the time? It was Claire in an action movie, and I kind of liked it. And then when Chris turned up and he's climbing a fucking mountain with his bare hands with that music, and it's like, oh my God. And I don't know. The thing is, like the intro being dramatically reworked, I understand makes more sense in a grounded way. It does make a lot more sense than Claire doing slow-mo catches and killing loads of guards. But just, I just like my heroes being heroes. And that sort of campy charm is one of the reasons why I love that game so much. And I just think if you're just so happy to just embrace the erasure of it, then where the fuck are we? It just... Because, like it or not, and we can kid ourselves as much as we like, we've tried to hold this tide back as long as we can on the podcast, but I think we face the inevitability of it now, that these remakes are replacing the originals in the perception of modern fans. That is a reality. Yes, bravo to Capcom for making the original trilogy available again on Steam and all that, and that's all really, really cool. And it would be really, really nice if, like, this version of Veronica actually has the original game as an unlockable bonus, so people on PC can finally have it as the original version and stuff. That would be really neat. But I don't know what some people see as, and I've seen a lot of people celebrating like the new direction of the intro and the fact that it it is not as described Die Hard with Claire Redfield and stuff. I just see it as erasure of something I deeply, deeply love. And here I am, despite years of being bludgeoned over the head by remakes and having to come to terms with it, and people lambasting me for my opinion over them. I sit here again, and I'm just thinking it's maybe fucking time to call it a day.
No, Sean, don't leave us.
Because the problem is, I don't think my opinion is ever, as much as I try and kid myself, ever going to align with what some of our listeners want it to be. And I know I'm going to get fucking chewed out over this again. And I'm sorry in advance, but I'm fucking tired of lying to myself. You know, I am.
I was going to say, this is the thing, though. I'm always in two minds about what you guys say, because whenever something gets revealed, we end up catastrophizing it in a lot of ways, because that's what I feel like you're doing, Sean. Like you because you're looking at the difference between what the original was and the remake. And I know in the end, you'll play the game and you'll actually be like, oh, you know, from a game perspective, I actually enjoyed it and it was fine. Like, it was okay. But you'll still lament the loss of what it means the same way that you're already saying. So it's not really catastrophizing. And I'd listen back to what you and others have said, and John said the same, I think, and Nick. I think all of you were kind of, I was the only one who was trying to be somewhat optimistic, I guess, back in 2015 about the Remake 2 train. That you were like, you know, where does this lead? Be careful what you wish for. And here we are, so many years on.
The thing of it is, I suppose from my point of view, John said something about the Zach Cregger movie in the last episode or the episode before it or whatever, that he was getting a little bit tired of like directors coming along and just using the name to forward their own projects and things like that. It is, you know, it's a point very much of merit. I kind of feel the same about the remake issue, because it's like I'm almost tired of having to sort of justify liking them by saying, well, you know, well, at least I know it's going to be a good game. You know, I'm tired of that. It's like, why can't it just embrace what made the original the special experience that it? Well, I don't know. I'm going to struggle with this one, guys. I'm not going to lie.
We could be celebrating Resident Evil 13. I think that was the other point.
I just think you just strip everything that gives Code Veronica its identity. It's no longer Code Veronica, which is why it's probably called Veronica now. Is that an indication it's something different?
George?
No, I just wanted to comment on that point that Stars makes about, you know, what made it so great in the first place. What makes me so sad is Capcom in the past with Studio 4, that era, they had such gems of visionary horror games, and some of the people associated with that are still available. You know, we talk about what really made Code Veronica so special, the sound design, you know, the character and the enemy design. You know, you've still got Satoshi Nakai, that was the enemy character designer of the original game. He's still out there. Not that long ago, was doing work with Invader Studios. So would it be too much? I mean, they've got it on their roster. Capcom, they could bring these people back. I mean, Konami of all companies, bloody hell, unbelievably did it. You know, with the remake of Silent Hill 2, they brought back, you know, the original character designer Ito and Akira, of course, the sound design, which is why that, you know, I think I hold it up as one of the best remakes of all time with the remake of Resident Evil that we, you know, on the GameCube. So it's just a shame that they have that in their roster, Capcom, and it's just so sad that, I mean, wow, in what great hands and how different this reimagining could be if you know, if they had the original character designer. And
well, they might. You never know. We don't know. Let's go through parts of the trailer then and see what we can dissect. I mean, it starts off in the first person mode. I think, can we assume from it that you're going to be able to play the game in first person as well? Probably a bit like what they did with Requiem, flip between the two on the fly.
I'd say it's more like Remake 3, where the sort of little prologue in Jill's apartment's first person, and then it transitions into third when the game starts proper.
Oh, do you think? Oh, okay. I thought they might just do it both, like Requiem.
No, I think it'll just be third person.
I wouldn't be surprised either. It's just third person. I mean, it might be the fact that Requiem's been in development that they might retroactively have fitted in, but it may have been that the development started with this always being intended to be third person. I won't be surprised either way if they come around and say, actually, we've implemented this because of the feedback to Requiem, but it was supposed to be third person originally, or if it just sticks to one fixed. It might be a case new games going forward definitely fit more the Requiem vibe, where they try and allow you to choose, because that's obviously been proven to be quite successful.
Yeah.
I think for this, I wouldn't be surprised if it is just fixed, like John said.
We're taken into Chris's apartment, which I believe correlates quite nicely with the Remake 3 epilogue, potentially being Chris's apartment there.
No, that's Jill in the Remake 3 epilogue. I know she's got a green t-shirt on, which is Chris's colour, but that's Jill. I don't think it's related at all.
Are we clutching at straws a little bit there?
Well, it's not Chris's proper apartment, is it? It's just a safe house where he's hiding out.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, even if they intended to be the same place, it could just be Jill visiting him to drop that off and catch up with him and then disappearing again after the events of Raccoon City. So it could be the same place but different character, but it could just be a complete, they've just gone with an apartment that looks very similar to the one that there was in the end of that. I don't think it is exactly the same, but I haven't looked at it in much detail.
Rob, you mentioned that there was an umbrella building. Is that the one that right at the beginning, the kind of high-rise?
Yep, the really big high-rise building, if you actually look at it, has a big umbrella logo on the top of the building. So obviously the implication is that this must be the town or location and part of where their headquarters and is. And in theory, that would be the building that Claire invades in the OG version.
So there's still a chance. There's still a chance.
I don't think so. I think unfortunately for you guys, to Sean's lament and to John's approval, I think the helicopter storming the ground and being caught by Rodrigo's gone. I think it's going to be the commander/hunk delivery to the island, unfortunately.
Let's just review the changes so far. So in the original Code Veronica, the only reason Claire's in Paris is she's looking for clues as to where Chris is. She doesn't know where he is. And she breaks into the Umbrella building. All that stuff happens. She gets captured by Rodrigo, who is head of security at that facility, and he transports her to the island. She then subsequently finds out where Chris is because Umbrella have him under surveillance, so they know where he is. So Claire takes that location data and sends it to Leon. And that's why Chris suddenly disappears from his safe house before Jill gets there and leaves for Rockfort Island. Whereas in this, Claire doesn't seem to go to the Umbrella building. She already knows where Chris's location is. I have a feeling Leon has probably still, through his connections in the government, found out where Chris is and passed the location on to Claire. It's interesting, where is Chris? Because we know Chris leaves in the original because he knows Claire got abducted. But obviously that hasn't happened yet in this version.
Yeah, my assumption is that Chris has disappeared for whatever reason, that Chris has disappeared, which is why the woman doesn't have any idea exactly, hasn't seen him for a little while. And it looks like he's left in a reasonable hurry considering the stuff that he's left behind for reasons you don't know. And I think it'll still turn out that Umbrella's got surveillance on him because clearly they are watching because they grab Claire who visits the apartment. So it probably still works out the same that once she's on Rockfort, she finds the information of where Chris actually is. They've figured out where he is and has tried to track him and still ends up getting it to Leon, which gets Chris to her. Or alternatively, Chris comes back and finds that Claire was kidnapped and then tracks down and does it in reverse.
Yeah. And why is Claire kidnapped if she doesn't go in the Umbrella building?
Yes, that's a good question.
Perhaps they kidnapped Claire to lure Chris out.
Leverage, I guess, yeah.
In the original, I don't think this was ever formally canonized, but I'm looking at it right now on my phone. I've got this really old screenshot, either from a beta element, but Chris was apparently in or around Hungary at the time, the country of Hungary, traveling through Europe.
So he was traveling through Europe trying to find other connections for Umbrella, not just in Paris and France, but also throughout Europe, which, that track.
That's not officially canon, but it's something that was said to me a very, 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 very long time ago. And there's a little flag of Chris going, he looks like he's in kind of South Hungary, North Slovenia-ish area. It's not very clear, but that's where he roughly is. But yeah, so that does represent a change right off the bat.
I think Hunk being there is, nice, because we know he's mentioned in a file in the original game. He trained at Rockfort Island, and we know he transports the Tyrant there, so it would seem to make sense that his team is the one who takes Claire to the island along with the Tyrant.
Is there a potential that it's a bluff, though? Because it's definitely not Keith Silverstein, which seems strange given he was back for Requiem.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it certainly doesn't sound like him, but, it's got Hunk's mask, unless they're just reusing the commander's asset, I don't know.
For the trailer, and it could actually be Rodrigo in the final game or something.
Yeah, I mean, they could change.
Yeah, I was going to say, or they just use the model, but it's supposed to be a different person, but a platoon commander that's not Hunk. So
yeah,
there's lots of additional Hunk with Rockford, isn't there? Part of Operation Raccoon City and the inserted evil stuff. Is that right?
Well, it's just like a remake of the file, basically, about him transporting the T-078 to the island.
There's also a nice little Easter egg in the opening bit in the streets. There's the Café de Parapluie, which of course means umbrella in French. So it's the Umbrella Cafe that Claire drives past. Very nice.
People also pointed out the license plate on the car you see has one of the codes from the original game with the portrait of the skeleton.
Yes, yeah, that was a nice little touch. So what do we do? So we see the old lady in the room, and there's a nice reference again, isn't there, to Resident Evil 5, where she says it looks like a boulder's been through.
It's just such a forced connection. I'm sorry. Like, nobody, even with bad English, would ever use the expression, unless you saw a bunch of stuff that had been crushed. I don't think we'd ever use the expression of boulders rolled through. You'd always use like a wind, a tornado or a hurricane had come through, because it implies there's a mess left all over the place. For a boulder to roll through would imply there was either damage or something had been crushed. So I thought that's like a pretty forced. I get the intent, but it feels very forced. There's some nice decorative Easter eggs. I like the fact that he's already starting to try and build his muscles up with the dumbbells and
cigarettes as well. Still smoking that. That's almost like OGRE one, really, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a dictaphone camera. There's some files. There's a walkie-talkie, I think, of some description, which implies he's obviously talking to someone else. So who's he talking to? Yeah, there's lots of little things on the table.
I assume we'll get to, wander around the apartment and look at some files and get a flavour of what Chris has been up to.
I don't know. Maybe not. It feels like it was a self-contained cutscene, so...
Yeah, but I think it might have just been edited that way.
Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me either way, to be honest.
Yeah, she spends a long time looking at the biscuits, which I don't know if that means that it's delicious de Marquis. And she has a good look at that. I wonder if that's part of it, maybe it's something hidden inside it.
Well, I wonder how many people had on their bingo card that Code Veronica remake would show a little old lady nicking Chris's French biscuits.
Yeah, absolutely. So then lady goes away because the maintenance man, and then Hunk turns up. I mean, this is all probably going to be the new opening cutscene, as we kind of said. It does look like Hunk. It really does. We'll see. And then the trailer kind of carries on, and we start seeing lots of little shots of parts of the game. I've just got the trailer up here, so I'm just going to kind of go through some of the shots, and we can see if we can work out where and when. I don't want to get excited, ladies and gentlemen, but there is a forest scene at night. And of all the remakes that would possibly do a dark forest scene at night, which I've longed for, I didn't have Code Veronica as a potential option. I thought if Zero remake happens, that will be the one. But that looks to be a slightly new area. If you're looking at it, it looks like an old pine forest. It's obviously part of Rockfort, but that I don't remember anything like that being part of the game, unless it's expanding maybe up to the private residence, maybe.
Well, the aerial shots we get of the island in the trailer, it's completely blanketed with trees, so it wouldn't surprise me if it's like a new area, to sort of represent the trails from one part of the island to the other.
Yeah.
And part of the original design for Code Veronica originally was that you were supposed to explore more of the island in the original version than we did as well. So this tracks with that idea of like expanding the map.
Because I think that was one of the criticisms that people have. As you said, John, in the original game, there's lots of backtracking because you go from different place to different place. I always said you have to kind of treat the whole island as one big hub area. You're kind of minded when you're playing it. Going, right, I'm now in the official residence. I'm now in a new hub area. But you're not. The whole thing is one massive hub, and so you kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it would be good if it expands, and as you said, you get to go elsewhere. Because am I correct in thinking that Rodrigo was born on the island?
Yes,
and had his family were all there.
Again, that was part of the original narrative that they wanted to expand upon and never got into very much.
Because aren't those gravestones some members of his family when you first take over as Chris?
Yes.
I mean, Rodrigo's going to get a much more expanded role. I've just seen in our Discord people have been theorising perhaps almost taking like the Marvin role from Remake 2.
Well, I think if that is Hunk and not Rodrigo in the intro, then I think they've retconned his character to just being head of security on Rockfort Island rather than head of security at the Paris branch.
Yeah.
Because in the original game, he just transports Claire to the island and then gets stuck there because of the biohazard.
But again, I mean, that's almost a personification of all the things that I'm just so worried this game won't do. That, that's, you look at what his narrative was in the original, just that sadness, that fatal injury, but still, he gives up his life for Claire. She comes back. You can obviously get that scene when you come back, and then he meets Chris. It's so tragic. If we're not going to get that,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but the remake might help that regard if he's based on the island rather than at the Paris branch in the remake.
It's more of a connection to the island, thus makes it more tragic, because from the original game you already learn how much, essentially the original families that were on the island were downtrodden by the Ashfords. So it's like you end up adding more sympathy when you realize how much you've got more emotive impact. I mean, it could happen the reverse. There could be less, but who knows at this stage.
I'm just thinking about that opening when we're first introduced to him as someone that has effectively given up on his life and is looking to kind of make amends at the very least in his dying moments by helping Claire. Just in those opening moments, that we get that. That's why for me it was so impactful. But yeah, we'll see.
There's some implication that still must be happen, or something happens, because that shot later in the trailer, you see the bottle of his hemostatic medicine on the floor.
Yeah.
Before you get the shot of the zombies attacking. So I don't know what that means. And it does make me worry more the opposite, that like if there's a bunch of these enemies in the room, is Rodriguez somewhere there? Is he going to get attacked and killed straight away? And that's going to change things quite drastically.
She looks up. It looks like she's in that bit of the scene. It looks like she's in the prison, and then she kind of looks up. Then the zombies kind of run towards her.
Yeah.
Or at least leap towards her. Yeah, maybe.
It'd be interesting. The alternative would be that they, Rodriguez there, but he quickly throws himself into a cell, and she ends up defending herself against these zombies or something because of it. I don't know. It's an odd choice already.
I mean, there will be a training zombie, won't there? There always is. There's going to be the tutorial level. You might get a slight play. What was always quite scary about Code Veronica was the first zombie action was you're suddenly surrounded, aren't you, at the beginning, and it's really hard to get out of that graveyard area without being hit. In typical RE fashion, you are literally thrown into it, even that you've got a couple of minutes with Lighter going around getting used to the controls. But I suspect you're going to get a scene with just one zombie telling you how to shoot and aim and all that, so that impact might lessen a little bit. I'm going to carry on because the next shot I'm looking at, it looks quite laboratory-like, and there's lots of kind of like sheets and a big fan that they quickly, focus on. But I've no idea where this is in reality, but my first instinct seeing it was whether this was the room in Code Veronica where it's implied that that's where the T-virus leaked from, where I think the Hunter Sweeper jumps through. I think in part of Chris's, there's a whole air vent, and there's I think if you look at it, it goes, this looks like where something may have escaped, that kind of thing. I wonder if it's that room. That led my train of thought to then go, actually, there's an opportunity with this remake to actually show in detail what the hell happened, what causes the outbreak. Because in Code Veronica, apart from a couple of bombs going off, and then Wesker later saying, oh yes, I attacked the island, you really have to piece the puzzle together yourself. I think Dark Side Chronicles expanded it a little bit with some, with all the kind of lights going up and all the kind of air raid sirens, and as HCF attacked. I wonder if we're going to see a lot more as to why and how the T-virus spread on Rockfort.
Well, that's what I'm certainly hoping for. And again, that was one of the reasons I was disappointed in the original. Everything just seems to randomly happen without any explanation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't even find out how the Antarctic base was infected unless you read DIJ's diary, which is like an unlockable bonus. So you've no clue how that biohazard happened.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. Obviously, the involvement of Wesker. This is the chance for them to dive deep on the rival company finally, and tell us the ins and outs of what HCF actually is. Yeah, just the opportunities with this remake are exciting.
So say, Nick, that shot of the fans next is the next location in the trailer is the same location. You can see them in the top right corner.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh blimey, yeah. Where's that then?
Well, it looks like there's a little walkway there, so it looks a bit like the motor pool room from the original.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And there's a little platform thing at the end that's overlooking down the bottom that's got buttons on it. So control panels for lifting something.
Is that Steve's dad's death area?
Well, I was thinking more possibly that, or the area where originally there was a lift that went upstairs and you moved the crane around. There's like a control panel. It could be that one, and it's been reimagined. But I'm not sure. It could be either of those areas.
Oh, yeah. That was in the underground airport, wasn't it?
Yeah. The training facility, the connection between that and the training facility.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The lift was off to the left. I mean, it could be that. It could be something completely original. It's hard to tell just because I see that panel. But it could be also, there could be the fort, but where Steve's dad was down the bottom, where the tank should be. But then I'm like, why is there this big metal structure and the plastic around it? So yeah, it could be an original area.
Sean, what's your take on potential showcasing of the actual biohazard outbreak?
Yeah, I think it's a fair criticism of the original. It is painfully unexplained, and I'm not saying I'm someone who needs everything explained, but the first sign that you have anything going on is the rubble falling from the ceiling and stuff in Claire's cell, and then suddenly the zombies everywhere. You never really elaborated on exactly what's occurred. You just have to kind of put the pieces, very vague pieces, together yourself. Obviously, the X edition adds the sequence with Wesker to Claire, where Wesker admits in the first half of the game that he's the one who attacked the island, but Chris only surmises that in the original version during their later confrontation on Rockfort. But even then, John's right, you don't get any clear explanation on exactly what's occurred, to the point where when you're doing Chris's chapter and he's going around Rockfort, you've suddenly got these weird zombies with glowing red eyes, and unless you actually scrutinise them properly, you actually realise they're Wesker's team wearing night vision goggles.
Yeah.
It's all a bit weird and painfully unexplained. And so, yeah, if you're going to do a remake, if you're going to do this kind of thing, you may as well elaborate on it and actually make it make quite a lot of sense. Because I even remember back in the day watching that original FMV, being dazzled by the image quality of, like, how realistic Claire looked in the FMV, but then actually asking myself what's going on, and all you get is a throwaway line from Rodrigo, and even he says, I don't know, it must be an attack of some kind. And that's it. That's your setup for the first half of the game. So everything to do with Code Veronica is completely vague, from even just like the point of view of like the sub turning up in the X edition. It doesn't even really demonstrate that that's Wesker's sub, that that was his escape plan once he snatches Alexia and things like that. It's very obvious with 25 years of hindsight, but when you think of how the game presented its facts on a first playthrough, it's all a bit scattered and all over the place.
And this is the thing that I was talking to earlier, is that there's a lot of stuff that was on the cutting room floor or wasn't expanded upon because of the timings and the development and all that sort of stuff that this remake is potentially rich for, very much so.
It's even just little things like the fact that the plane that Claire and Steve used to escape autopilots to the Antarctic base. If you happen to miss that small detail, if you're napping at any point, like, there is big jumps in terms of geography, logic. So I get it. You do make a fine point, Nick. Like, if you're going to do it, you may as well streamline the narrative. And let's be brutally honest, that's one thing the remakes have done extremely well. Streamline and give you a Cliff Notes version of the game. Well, Code Veronica might actually, if you want to play devil's advocate, might benefit from a little bit of that, to be honest.
George?
I only just wanted to say I'm just so concerned that when we see those laboratory areas, yes, and it's obviously a good thing that there's going to be expansion and explanation on the lore, and Capcom, of course, will think, well, this is what fans want. But I think with this particular game, what Code Veronica brought the original, with that extra lore, we're going to get those blander, ironically for the complaints we've had about the original, we are going to get those kind of blander laboratory environments at the expense of, I was just thinking of the anatomists area and that kind of eccentric supporting cast that we got, and think of it, his in the opening line in his file, I think there is a demon in my mind, and that Alfred gives him this free reign to just express his passion for torture, and all those little areas and those kind of, like I said, that supporting cast, I think, may be substituted for this grander scale laboratory, and this is what was going on with Wesker, which from a law point of view, it is beneficial. But I just, again, which is going to just strip back everything that what made Code Veronica what Code Veronica was.
That singular seat, isn't there? Is it someone sitting and watching the torture? The anatomists, that the super zombie and all that, it's a real highlight.
The bottle of wine.
The bottle of wine, yeah. I'm not keen on seeing Nest 3 or anything like that, but
I think we'll still get all that stuff. We see one dead body, don't we, that's basically got a Nazi's uniform on, except it's got the little umbrella logo instead of the swastika.
No, I feel like there's going to be. It's part of the inherent history of this island being taken over. That I think if you start to remove that, I think it's only a reason to keep that or double down on it. And inherently, it's not to say it's easy, but it's a really easy connection to go. Oh, there was a influence on a noble family that had connections to Germany, that also had connections to Nazis, that was more than happy to experiment on people for viral research. Like it's just that through line of and they fled to an island, that's somewhere in South America, like off the coast. It's like the Argentinian Nazi connection,
I think one of the funny things with Code Veronica was that it was billed as the next game, but generally speaking, it's quite inconsequential in terms of what was being pressed as the big selling point. Not the selling, but the big narrative arc is we're going to take down Umbrella. Code Veronica is almost like a sub boss, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'll just take down other family.
It's not in of itself at the time. It's what came afterwards. Inherently, I think is the problem. Because if they had really pushed more on the Wesker angle straight off the bat, you would go, "Oh, this is a continuation of Code Veronica and the lineage," and the narrative had continued in a timely fashion, i.e., like the next events took place only so many months after Code Veronica, then it would probably have more pertinence. But it's the fact that then they didn't, and that's what's kind of retroactively changed it. It probably wasn't the intent at the time. And Code Veronica X as well, when you look at that being the additions that they added, to try and shore up some more of the narrative around Wesker, it's like that seemed like where they were obviously wanting to go, along with the Umbrella connection. They wanted this like rival clashing, like why did Wesker steal research? Who's he working for? And they're setting up some sort of clash between Umbrella and whatever this was going to be at the time, which just never really paid off. So it's not necessarily through design. It probably would have been the next big thing. It's just they never followed up on it properly. And it took 20-something years for us to get some of the answers to some of the questions in that game. And even now that they're going to reimagine this, it's going to either add or answer some new questions and then probably add others, which unfortunately is the part of the course on the remakes too. Like on these reimagined games, we end up with like Cliff Notes versions, but sometimes with their own new mysteries, they're not solving old ones. So, yeah.
The funny thing they could do, these random thoughts coming to my mind, we're kind of going to be in the same sort of situation, aren't we? With this game come out, it's going to be, we've got Takedown of Umbrella 2, 3, now Code Veronica. They in theory have an opportunity to basically do the game, the Resident Evil 4 that people expected them to do.
Ironically, yes. Or taking like the Umbrella's End scenario of Chronicles games and reimagining that into an actual game with like a different style of gameplay and maybe not some of the most absurd elements, but still like the concept behind it. That's definitely true. It would be absolutely amazing for them to turn around and announce a brand new game that literally went back to the past and was part of the Umbrella's downfall now that they've remade so many of these games.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'll tell you now, if next year or whatever, when we're all anticipating the Zero remake, if that trailer comes up on it and the subtitle appears, Resident Evil Umbrella's End, like I'll fall off my fucking chair, because that is something you can remake and I'll be totally on board for it.
That's it. Lock that in. The remake, we're on board.
Well, why not? If you're going to remake anything, why not remake a chapter from like Umbrella Chronicles and make it as a fully fledged Resident Evil title?
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't want to see Chris and Jill going around the final Umbrella facility? It'd be fucking amazing. Like, that's where the resources should be going.
The great way that would tie in too is that you would essentially then, at the end of the game, you have a little coda thing, which is basically Lost in Nightmares and remade, and it connects to straight to 5, and Jill, and you just be like, oh, cool, that makes sense. After the Umbrella's End scenario, you end up confronting Spencer, and then the events happen. Cool, that makes sense.
That's definitely the way they should go.
I just wanted to push back a little bit on what Nick said about kind of the relative significance that the narrative plays in the the overall series, because just for me, I really got, because it was before Zero, I really got kind of this feeling of the historic nature and the history and the political intrigue of Umbrella, and that it kind of really kind of expanded Umbrella out into Europe, but also just the history, like the generational Ashfords, and just kind of for me made everything have more kind of a significance and a historic greater depth to the series.
I agree with that too, GT, and that's my reasoning behind, like, I think at the time it would have made more sense because you were expanding the company and the understanding. The only thing that undermined it is that by the time we got the next actual mainline title, it was like, Umbrella's dead.
Yeah.
So all that stuff that you learned basically almost became for naught, not because it was designed that way. It should have worked exactly the way it was intended, which is that gives you a lot more history of the founding of Umbrella and who's involved in it, all this stuff. But then it became a moot point because we never followed up on Wesker. We never followed up on Umbrella. Umbrella was killed off screen, so it essentially takes all the impetus away from what you learned. You learned all the stuff and it amounted to nothing. And that's not by design. It was just the unfortunate where the franchise went. And that's why, again, I'm excited about where this could actually lead now that it gives them a chance to reappraise it and go, right, we're doing this under the right intents, knowing where this was going to lead. But
So what you're saying is that it's Resident Evil 4's fault.
yeah.
I think there's a good opportunity that they could do, and I don't think that they won't resist it, to show what we've just been speaking about in terms of how the virus spread, that we could get Wesker playable section, DLC, whatever you want to call it, showing him leading HCF to attack and then taking out, and then whatever he needs to do on Rockfort, getting to the submarine, whatever, that kind of thing. I think that'd be quite interesting just to see his version of events, because I think we'll get playable Steve for a little bit, probably taking on a similar Sherry role, more expanded, a little bit more action heavy, and then we're obviously going to get Chris later. But I think there's an opportunity for them to have playable Wesker, which the fans will very much like to do as a kind of fun little
Possible.
I think so. I think that would also be a way of possibly, if they want to keep a degree of mystery about why the outbreak happened on the island, a bit like what they did in the original. And so you play the game in the same sort of way, not really knowing what's happened on this island, how has this happened, and you've got to piece together the clues. And then you don't really know until the end. And then you've got this unlockable scenario with Wesker. Then that can start with the attack. And so you get the answers that way. I could see that as a potential narrative choice. So looking further into the trailer, we see the 2 helicopters arriving on Rockfort Island.
You skipped one. No.
What have I skipped? The computer room.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out, is this the computer room or is this the scanner? Because it says scan on the big button that's by the thing. And it says that there's an Umbrella logo to the right.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of P codes onto the screen that I can read P4, P5, I'm assuming P6 closer to the camera, as if it's a slider. And so I'm wondering if this is the duplication machine. And the text reads, please insert your card, special mode off. And then I can't read the word, but it's something your work or something, I think. So I'm thinking this is the malleable materials printer, like the 3D printer essentially that you get to make stuff, not the computer that you use to contact Leon.
Are you guys pleased that the security box can torment an entirely new generation of video gamers?
It has to be in there. They have to include that. And it has to be as annoying.
And it has to be as annoying. And also you have to keep a hold of the fire extinguisher for no reason. Only to use it for some specific reason near the end of the game. Got to keep that in there.
I think you're spot on with that. Yeah, your initial feeling is that the email, but it's not. It's the TGO1 stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. I think it's the scanner and printer. Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there. Pretty obvious. And then you've got the actual computer room with the cables as the next shot. And that one I'm like, is this part of that same lab or not? I'm not sure.
Then you get the dragonfly.
Mm-hmm.
That is one scene I hope they do replicate. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Because one thing Code Veronica is you can celebrate it for is being fucking weird. Like it's a weird game and it explores some weird things. And I'm not talking about like the obvious issue with Claire's comments towards Alfred and stuff like that. I'm talking about the relationship between Alfred and Alexia specifically, and how intimate it looks. Even that cutscene where they pull the wings off the dragonfly, I still think is a masterclass in video game direction. I still think it's impactful even now, especially down to just how fucking weird it is. It really is. The themes and the tone that is current through it. And the question I have to ask you guys is, modern day sensibilities and things like that, are Capcom going to double down on it and really go for it? Or are they going to lessen it? Are they going to just keep it a lot more vague than the implications of the original game? Because these are sensitive subjects. We're talking about very deep mental health issues, certainly with regards to Alfred. Very sensitive subjects. I honestly don't know whether Capcom are even going to go anywhere near entertaining the possibility of exploring them, or whether they just keep it very surface now.
Remarkably, I will defend Capcom on this point that, Konami were able to do it obviously with Donna Burke's character, Angela Roscoe, and obviously the sexual abuse that she received, because the original handled it in the same very sensitive and grown up and intelligent way, whereas as you quite rightly point out, Code Veronica
Didn't.
Yes, exactly. There isn't really that grounding. There isn't that kind of base, that foundation to kind of play on. It was so jarring from the Claire Redfield character, her rather, off-key remark. But then, just like you say, the relationship between the siblings and that incredible cutscene was still very much within an environment that was very peculiar and odd and over the top and garish and slightly camp as well in aspects. So I don't think Capcom. I mean, would it be an opportunity to kind of handle that very sensitively? It's just not in keeping with the original, so I think it would just be easier for them just to completely brush it to one side.
Will we see a Tanya route taken, as seen in Dark Side Chronicles?
Remind me and the listeners on that one, because even I can't fucking remember. I haven't played Dark Side Chronicles for 10 years.
So Tanya is part of the unlockable audio files you can get for the Game of Oblivion scenario, in which Alfred basically, as part of his illness, he starts to believe that Alexia, the girl who's in cryosleep in the Antarctic lab, is actually just another female test subject called Tanya. And that Alexia, the real Alexia, is still with him. So it's meant to just sort of elaborate, part of his psychosis. It helps him cope, basically, because he believes Alexia's still with him and the girl in Antarctica is just a random test subject. He visits her every year and she's a happy birthday.
Yeah.
Is that stuff that was in the original drafts?
The Krugers?
No, not to my knowledge. It was something new for Dark Side Chronicles. It's inconsequential. It doesn't really go anywhere.
It's just an explanation as to why he does the whole Alfred Alexia thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because they had audio files for the other scenarios, they just needed something for Dark Side.
Therein leads the other question then, Rob. Are they even going to entertain Alfred literally visualizing himself as two personalities?
It's a tough one, because I think as a concept it's really interesting, because it will add that dynamic between exactly what it means. You take away Claire's line and it's just clearly the mental breakdown of him as an individual. It's kind of an interesting narrative to still keep if you can. Your other option is you essentially just make him Alfred, but you make him very maniacal and kind of over the top. But even, you look at Resident Evil 4's remake, even the over the top characters that were in that have been toned down quite significantly, I think. This is probably a fair point to say. So I think maybe you find a little middle ground where he's a little bit eccentric, a little bit weird, but maybe not to that degree. And you just have to be happy with that balance to get the tone of the concept of the character across more so than the actual things that he's doing, if that makes sense. It's going to be a deft hand to include it, I think, otherwise. I don't know. It's part of the character. It's kind of hard.
Well, it's fundamental to the storyline. It's all about sibling rivalry, isn't it?
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, it makes it really tough if you take that element away. But if you can find a way to express it in a different way, then it might be still doable. It's just, it comes across otherwise as petty jealousy rather than admiration as well, because there's that dual thing going on,
It's sibling love, isn't it? It's the, Chris doing absolutely everything he can to rescue his sister.
Well, this fundamentally asks us the question of the bigger plot point, and even the opening, as we've all talked about. How does that change the dynamic setup of Claire not invading and the way she gets captured, and thus the impacts on how Chris gets involved, and the back and forth there changes the dynamics. How does that reflect on the other side of the Alexia and Alfred? It gives an opportunity to remix our concepts and still have the core underlying beliefs, which is pretty much par for the course on these remakes, right? Like we if it's not just the Cliff Notes version, it's a more emotional but streamlined versions of events. You look at what's stuff from Resident Evil 2 remake and 4. The beats are still there, they're still relevant, but maybe they've remixed the styling of what it means, or the depth of which it plumbs, or vice versa. So yeah, it's very open. I can't be surprised either way, is what I think I'm trying to say. Like, if they decide to do it, they have to do it with deft hand, but they'll do it if they can figure out a way to make it work. There definitely won't be the cross-dressing freak line anymore. That's definitely going to go out the window. That would be ridiculous to try and keep in the current day and age. But, I could see them figuring out maybe a different way to show the same concept, but without having to do that the way it's done in the original.
Yeah, just so my stance is clear on it, I think they should embrace everything they attempted in the original and go for it again. I don't want to see any of it dumbed down, because I think thematically it's all extremely important.
I agree.
You know, on the surface, everybody remembers Alfred for the, you know, his sort of crazy maniacal laughter over the radio and things like that. But there is actually a deeply tragic undercurrent to him as a character. And I think to not embrace that in all of its quirks and all of its weirdness is to do a disservice to what they achieved in the original game, because it was, as much as we like to say, like, Code Veronica is this at times high camp experience with larger than life heroes, there is a very much a strong adult theme that runs through the game, and I think it was one of the first times I think Resident Evil really kind of explored that.
I mean, it's the same thing GT was talking about with Rodrigo at the start, and you know, you get into the first real cutscene of the game outside of the opening action sequence, and it's really, you've already got a confrontation on a human connection. It may not be as in depth as games have gotten now, but for 2000. It was absolutely, yeah, as you said, Sean, absolutely mind blowing. And so across the board, you know, to have that sort of that thing, you want to keep as much of that feel at least there.
I think they can. I think I agree with what you said. I think they will keep the themes. They will be a lot more sensitive, as they should, to modern trends. As I said, Alexia and Alfred are almost like extremist versions of Claire and Chris, aren't they? You know, each brother doing anything they can to aid their sister. Chris saving, Alfred, God knows what, but it's all in service for the Ashford good. And, you know, making sure that Alexia is well, you know, her experiments can continue, killing her father and all that. So it's really important, therefore, that sibling element is well defined. And as I said, I think you can see how Alfred loses his mind in preserving that, and that's the kind of fundamental difference between them. But I'd like to see them expand upon it and kind of almost ask questions about your level of dedication to family and, you know, siblings, and without it getting too confrontational. But I think they can do it. I think they're not bad. They're not bad writers.
Well, I have to keep Alfred's dual personality, because that's a core part of the first game. And it's one of the big plot twists, isn't it? Because when you played Code Veronica for the first time, you didn't know. You actually thought Alexia was on the island with Alfred, because, you know, it's hinted at in files and whatnot, and we obviously see, quote-unquote, Alexia in a cutscene.
Yeah, them individually, yeah.
And it's only sort of at the halfway stage when you get that really powerful scene where Alfred sees his own reflection in the mirror when he's wearing the makeup. Do you realise that Alexia didn't exist at all? And then you get the further plot twist finding out, well, yes, she did, but she's actually in cryosleep in Antarctica. So, you know, that's a core part of the overall story, so I can't see them changing that.
So I wonder which sort of approach they'll take with the character of, Alexia with regards to her feelings toward Alfred, because Dark Side Chronicles, you know, infamously much more in tone in keeping with the original drafts, where she very much resented him. I mean, I think she always resented him, but there was a level of compassion you get in the original Code Veronica, certainly in his death scene.
Yeah.
Whereas he's very much just dismissed in Dark Side Chronicles. You get that really awful scene, which I've never liked, where she just breaks his neck or whatever, and he drops the snow globe. I just think it loses all the idea, everything we've just said about like siblings and themes and everything like that. I think Dark Side Chronicles just completely botched it, and I'd be really disappointed if a remake went more that way than trying to capture the level of emotion depicted in the cutscene where she awakens in the original Code Veronica, which is still to this day one of my favorite entire sequences in the entire series. You know, when she awakens and she cradles him, and I know there's the big issues with 50-foot tentacles shooting across the eye, so it's all a bit ridiculous. But the actual, like, the way the music and the images convey that moment, I think is beautiful. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, it fits the role better, I think, because throughout the game you're told there's a queen ant, but there's also the king ant, and that is shown in her compassion, because ultimately the queen ant is the ruler, and she will do whatever she needs to do. But at the same time, she's respected the king ant in protecting her, which is what all the kind of king and soldier ants do. They've been able to keep her safe in cryosleep so that she can bond with the T Veronica virus. And there's that respect. Queen ants don't bite off the heads of of the soldier ants. That's what spiders do.
The implication in the original is because she refers to Alfred as a soldier ant, that's why he dresses up. You know, he has such a big military collection and dresses up like a general, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah, so as Sean says, there's that respect, isn't there, of when he does die. You know, he's there just to see her, and he almost dies knowing that he's done his job.
Yeah.
And then she cradles him and's like, "Yes, you've done well. My turn now."
Yeah.
Beautiful, great scene, great scene. Sean's right. We'll see. I think we're probably going to need to see a little bit more footage of Alfred. You can see a little bit of him later in the trailer, can't you? I think we're going to need to see cutscenes of some description. So moving ahead into the trailer, there's that Nazi uniform-ish umbrella man that's dead.
Which turns up later in the trailer as well. So the last scene is the same location, and Claire looks at the blood, which is where the body was, and he's one of the enemies that you see flash up as that same soldier. So I'm wondering if she takes the gun off him and then something happens because it's gotten darker and then the body's disappeared. She hears a noise, turns around, and that body's disappeared, and then all these enemies are there.
He's probably your training zombie, Nick. If he's dead in the prison outside your cell, yeah, you'll probably take the gun off him and he'll revive, I imagine.
I don't know if it fits in the time here, but I just thought it was interesting that, because we're talking about the asteroids and the characters, that with other games at this point, we have had a larger cast, character biography on the website. And if you go to the official website, currently there's only information on Claire, nothing about the asteroids at all.
I think they'll keep a lot of it Sturm at the moment. I still think there's 9 DLC coming. I mean, this is a long way off yet. I'd imagine January, February time. So I'm sure we'll get more. Tokyo Game Show, maybe. The next scene is one of the only ones we can definitely say with a lot of certainty as to where that is. So the next shot is of the entrance to the prison. And I've seen a few people compare it on Twitter with the fire at the front.
You're right into the truck on fire, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. And this is looking very militaristic.
Looks very cool.
I hope they go into a little bit more detail in terms of Umbrella training, because apart from the file that says Hunk trained here, again, you've got to use your imagination a little bit. You don't ever see these areas where they train other than a courtyard or whatnot. But this is a prison island stored for Umbrella would send rivals to, and their USS would be trained, and other units, I suspect, as well. I hope that bit gets expanded as well.
It probably will. I mean, they added that section in Darkside Chronicles, didn't they, with the kill house, where Alfred explains that's where the soldiers trained. But this is where, adding new files and new lore will do wonders, just like the new files did for Remake 4. New Prisoners' Diaries, Steve Burnside's dad, that's another subplot that can expand on here. You've got Robert Dawson, who was Alfred's attendant, who's been locked up here because he asked him about Alexia. And obviously, with the graphical improvements, they can do a lot more imagery and a lot more environmental storytelling. This particular shot of the prison entrance is really impressive.
I do like how the Eagle Halberd logo is essentially 1-to-1 as well. It's decent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good spot, yeah. Do you think we might get Tyrant fight there? Got a decent area?
Who knows? It's so vague, this trailer, isn't it? I mean, we're spending like all this time hypothesizing everything in it, but we are showed painfully little.
We'll speed through. Then we get the 2 helicopters, and I think there's been speculation that one is with Hunk and Tyrant, as you said, John, and then the other is with Claire, which would make sense.
Well, it's shot for shot from the original, isn't it? Yeah.
Your identification number is WKD 4496. Are we going to get that this time?
They're going to change the number just to piss you off.
But you do get a good idea of the sheer amount of forest coverage on this shot.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see how this... We've always mentioned how Capcom are quite good at prison islands and prisons generally. It'd be interesting to see what the feel is to this island, because if we've got forests, that's again quite similar to, what was it, Sane Island or whatever it's called in Revelations 2. So hopefully it still retains its unique feeling. Then we get a nice, beautiful close-up of the Gold Lugers, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I got very excited. All my skepticism and, my bitterness just immediately melted when I saw those. They were awesome just to see.
There's a huge amount of lore to them, isn't there, John?
Yeah, there were. Hermann Goering, I think, gifted them to a member of the Ashford family during the war.
You've still got the Eagles crest on with the halberd on the...
Yeah.
Can you guys not wait to see them smash through a window Matrix style in slow motion?
I hope they have a reference to that. I would love to see that happen. Like, it was so ridiculous at the time, but I kind of want it as a throwback, like of its era. Like, that'd be kind of cool. I don't think they will, but
I tell you what, talking of which, Bandersnatches could be something nightmare fuel in this game.
Well, one thing I'd hope they improve upon I mean, I love Bandersnatches, but they were, unfortunately with their backstory just didn't do the actual gameplay mechanics didn't do it justice, did it? Because they were very easy. They weren't the hunters that I really desperately wanted them to be. So that's definitely something they can improve on.
Especially they're supposed to be like mini tyrants. That they evolved from the tyrant program, weren't they? But they're like, pretty shit. Right, that's the Gold Lugers. Then we've got someone putting on their hood.
That's a Spurred Lady from RE5.
She's back.
She's appearing early. Yeah.
Who is this?
That's Steve on his way to the watchtower, I would say.
I think it's Steve, yeah.
you can see in the background too, there's the power poles and power lines and trees. And I did notice on that original tree shot, it looked kind of like you're looking towards a tower area or some structure off down the road. So I think that's maybe the same area. And so this forested area is near the entranceway. Whether or not you go down there originally or backtrack later, I'm not sure, but it's definitely, that looks very similar in that respect as far as like having the power poles and the metal fences and roadways and trucks and bits and pieces. So yeah,
cool. And then I think the money shot from the trailer, the main hall of the official residence.
I'm disappointed by it, Nick.
Were you?
because the layout's different.
I just think the original training facility main hall had a really unique sort of flavour with its single stairway and stuff like that. And I just feel they've just done the Resident Evil symmetrical double staircase thing again. And I just think it's kind of boring now.
I completely agree.
They moved that door that was underneath on the left to like central bottom. I'm wondering if that doorway at the bottom is, instead of it being like to a hallway, it actually goes straight to that like ornate room of, you know, the Ashford history, kind of like with the paintings and stuff, or a big boardroom. Like, why would you have a central door that doesn't lead to something important? So
it does beg the question, like, are they going to more central hub the training facility and keep that as a central location to which all others branch out from? Because in the original game, it's just another one of the sort of areas you explore. It's not really a central one. Okay, yeah, it's the first time you get a proper dedicated save room as such. But depending on how you use the structure of which you choose to play the game, it might not even be the first sort of location you go to. You can bypass it and go straight down with the sub and things like that. No, you can't. I don't think, actually.
Well, no, you can go to one of the facilities first. Or off to the right. You can go off to the right.
The military training facility.
And you can use the Eagle plate in two places, can't you?
Yeah.
Choose where you go first. So I hope to lean onto that a bit more.
I'm just going to say it looks gorgeous, but to me that it's just repeating a trope now of having a double staircased hallway.
We'll wait till we get to Antarctica and we see the bloody Arctic Mansion replica.
Oh no!
Oh, asset testing for remake.
Just put an asset ring in.
The irony of you saying that, Sean, is that the one in Village was only a single staircase going up the left.
Yeah.
I have a bigger question, though, because this is the same thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about a hub area. It's like, will they simplify the narrative and there'll be less backtracking? Will we go, here's the prison bit, you do the prison bit. Here's the military bit, you do the military bit. Here's the manor, you do the manor. Here's the private residence up on the hill. And then you backtrack, but only to go to the sub thing or whatever, like, minimalizing the amount of backtracking, making hub areas and streamlining the flow of the game compared to the original. Because that, to me, is one of the two elements I'm thinking of, is that. And one of the things the original game had was essentially the environmental zapping concept, which was that when you revisited things from the facility later as Chris, after the events that Claire had gone through, you got access to areas that you couldn't originally, or things had changed in some of the areas you did go through. And for me, that's one of the core elements of what makes Code Veronica particularly. Maybe not so much the backtracking, but definitely that revisiting previous areas with new looks, new changes, accessing doors you couldn't before. Like, yeah, that to me was fundamental to the design of that game. And I'm wondering if that'll completely change under this.
Could do, and then we get a little bit of a look at Alfred, don't we? We get a close-up of him wearing a nice pair of snooker gloves.
Snooker gloves.
Yeah, he's like an umpire. He's an umpire. He's the umpire. He's been playing billiards.
He's literally just come out of the casino, isn't he? He's just been dealing some fucking blackjack.
Also, can I just pull you up for calling a snooker referee an umpire?
Sorry, referee.
He's just lost all his money at the Kingmaker machine, hasn't he?
He has. Then we see a little bit more of the island, and then we get a nice close-up of Claire. And I think this is possibly one of the first games that uses the revised RE engine. Is it the REX? I think it's called.
REX, yeah. Although it might have been some of Requiem, obviously, as well. Very interesting, just talking about that last shot, and also you were talking about the engine as well. It's like the press materials that Capcom put out are very high resolution, very high detail. So there's some really good shots of the island. And what's also very interesting is that the detail on the character model for Claire is probably some of the most advanced tech I've ever seen.
Oh, it's stunning.
She has literal peach fuzz of hairs on her chin and like where sideburns. You know, it's really detailed. There's like finite little hairs and little scars and marks on her skin. Like, it's amazing technology from a rendering standpoint for cutscenes. Absolutely was shocked when I saw that, when I opened that press work. It's pretty damn advanced. Capcom's continuing to prove that this has got some of the best character modeling in the industry.
I hope it's Stephanie doing the voice just to keep that consistency.
I think it will be. If she came back to do lines for Survival Unit, there's no way she won't be retained for this. What do you think to her outfit? It's gone down really, really well with the community, but I feel sorry for Claire because she went from basically wearing the most iconic outfits in the entire series to just always wearing a jacket, trouser, vest combo now, and this is just an extension of it, I think. I think her Code Veronica outfit, as ridiculous as it was with the exposed midriff and everything like that, it's still pretty iconic, and I'm sad to see it go.
I think the difference for me is that they should have kept the jeans. They should have kept the blue jeans because I think that's part of that look. You can modernize the midriff and the jacket and everything and still have the tone, but the fact that she's now wearing dark colored pants kind of clashes with the fact that you used to have this quite visual palette of red and blue as her costume when she was, when you were controlling her running around, and you kind of muddied that a little bit by having a darker pair of pants. And so, yeah, I think they should have stuck with the brighter blue jeans as that. But I mean, they'll probably, let's be honest, they're going to add a DLC costume that'll be a throwback to the OG one that will be a bonus unlockable or pre-order or whatever. So inherently, I think we'll get that opportunity regardless. So I can't really moan too much, depending on obviously how much you feel about things behind the paywall.
And the whole point she didn't have a jacket in the original is because she gave it to Sherry. So to have pretty much a like-for-like jacket again kind of takes a little bit away from that.
Claire's outfit in Code Veronica has always been my favourite.
Iconic.
It's funny, it's because there's like 3 versions of Claire within Code Veronica. There's the in-game version, there's the cutscene version, then there's like the FMV version. And they're all slightly different depending of the quality. And I always found the in-game cutscenes very impressive. And that look, I thought she was great. I thought she was stunning back then, back in 2001. Like, wow. And it would be a shame to lose it. I mean, are they going to replicate the Steve having a little bit of a crush on Claire?
I think they will. I think it'll be very much changed. It'll be made more awkward and less creepy.
I was going to say, yeah, less sexual assault, literally, when she's asleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to get a shot of a bum again?
He's a teenage boy in the 90s. Of course he will.
That's the thing. He's what? Steve's 17, isn't he? She's 19. The whole world's been turned upside down. His parents are dead, and suddenly this hot girl turns up, wearing a pair of tight jeans, going, "I'm here to save you," kind of thing. Yeah, thank you. Yes, you are. And he's checking her out while she's fiddling on the computer.
But no, the fact that he does have the crush on her just kind of almost makes it even more touching. That obviously, spoiler alert. The death scene
for a 26-year-old game.
Something I did want to ask you guys is, we talk about spoilers. It's a 26-year-old game and all that. So does the caginess of the trailer, does it annoy? Does it frustrate somewhat? Obviously it's being made for modern fans who maybe haven't experienced the game before, so it's keeping its surprises up its sleeve.
Sean, I'm going to shoot you down because historically Capcom's been really bad at showing spoilers, and even in the new game trailers up until Requiem. So I think I would rather that they be subtle and restrained, even if it is a remake, than go down the route of, your Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6 trailers, which just showed way too much. And even your Resident Evil 4 remake trailer, which, they were much more controlled over that than perhaps as a release. As you're aware, like as far as review embargoes, it still didn't mean that they couldn't accidentally reveal a spoiler in their own trailer where if you paid attention, you could figure out how they'd recontextualize the death of a character. Like, I'd rather have less. And I'm we're already making our own guesses based on what we've seen in this, and it's like, yeah, there's stuff that we're going to assume. I guess at the end of the day, it's more about the fact that there will be changes and there will be surprises, and the less I can find that I'm more surprised when I go into it, even if I know where the end game's going to end up, I'm going to be happy with that if I don't get spoiled.
I think we're coming towards the end, but I want to put some more tinfoil hats on. Whilst, as you say, Rob, we kind of know, roughly what's going to happen, but there's always something quite new and unique in these remakes, whether it will be like in Remake 4, you kind of got this whole new bit with Ada eventually and that kind of sub-story, or Amber, or...
Yeah, we're already seeing this in the opening cutscene of what they've shown us, right? Like, this whole setup has completely changed. And Sean's joked about it, but there's some truth to it. Changing the title to just Veronica and instead of Code Veronica alludes that there is a change to this title. It is a different game, maybe.
I'm just thinking there's a few things in the original that they could really become a major event. So, like, there's a lot of crappy bosses in Code Veronica in that they don't put up much of a fight. Like, the Gulp Worm could become a big thing. The Albinoid.
Ugh, the Albinoid. Yeah.
That's you don't even need to fight it. You just run in, get the plate, and sod off, right? The Albinoid could become, I can almost predict it being a big event in terms of what you need to do. It won't be anything like what we've experienced before. Obviously, the Tyrant is going to be a massive end to Player's Chapter in Rockfort.
Radioactive hunters.
Oh, the sweepers.
Oh, the sweepers, yes.
Yeah. Is anything else anyone could... I'd imagine something like Nosferatu is going to be a really great boss fight.
Oh, Nosferatu, yeah. I mean, you make a very good point, because the actual design of the enemies, I mentioned him before, Satoshi Nakai, I think it's an absolute serious high, but the actual realization in the gameplay is lacking. The Nosferatu fight, you think of the actual history and the lore and the family implication relationship of that enemy, and then you get that the actual in-game boss battle is a real letdown. But yeah, the Bandit Snatchers, I think it could be an immense improvement if we can kind of get that ferocity that we had with the Hunters from Remake. That would be wonderful.
What about the moths and those fucking parasites?
Oh, so outside that room, it's so frustrating. Oh my god. Yeah.
You've already basically had the Tyrant on the cargo plane fight in Remake 2 with the Birkin G2 battle, with the container. It's mechanically identical, so I imagine it will play very similar to that if they try to recreate it. You'll just have to dish out a little bit of damage, hit the control, and then the cargo will slam into it.
It's either that or inherently they completely change it up because they're like, oh, we don't want to repeat what we've already done, which is everyone's concerned around Requiem doing a Zero.
They were clearly testing the mechanics in Remake 2 for this exact fight. Yeah.
Well, the giant spider in Antarctica will probably be just like the Titan spinner, won't it?
I was about to say, yeah, absolutely. Same thing. I think the Gulp Worm, they'll do it as a kind of apology for not including the Gravedigger in Remake 3 for that. But again, you don't even need to fight the Gravedigger in Claire's bit. You just run away from it.
To this day, I never have. Can you even defeat it?
I think if you shoot it for long enough, it just goes back under the ground and stops popping out.
God, I've never done it, ever.
But it's based on combat data of the RE3 Gravedigger, and if that didn't exist in the Remake universe, then...
Doesn't the file suggest that Hunk trained with the Gulp Worm, or against the Gulp Worm, or am I making that up?
Not Hunk specifically, but it was created for training purposes, yeah.
Right, okay. Bats? Could get some bats?
Bats would be interesting. They're pretty tame in this, but it'd be cool because you've got the darkness elements and stuff, and if you end up using a lighter or a torch...
We haven't had crows yet, have we, at all in the remake?
No.
Any other things, not necessarily BOWs, but any rooms or set pieces you're looking forward to seeing?
Given how they made Krauser versus Leon an actual proper in-game battle, I am wondering whether Chris versus Wesker will be a playable boss fight now.
100%.
With parrying, Nick, how do you feel about parrying?
I think it will be, because I think, in theory, as Chris, you would have taken out Alexia, Alexia 2 and 3, you shouldn't have a lot of ammo left. So I think the game developers will be a little bit mindful about you, unless they just suddenly chuck you loads of ammo. You'll be like, oh, it could very much be a knife fight type thing.
This fist fight would be much more interesting.
Yeah.
Or will they go the Dark Side Chronicles route and just have him finding a knife in the wall and then just sharing that look and recreating one of John's favourite scenes in the entire series?
I do love that ending where they just stare each other off.
But they don't actually meet each other, do they, in Dark Side?
No, but I think if they were to do that here, fan base would just never forgive them.
It could be a combination of the two, where like he thinks he's defeated and then trying to escape, and then he manages to get out, and you end up with this: the place is blowing up, and the two sides have been separated again after their battle. And so you could have it both ways if you really wanted to.
So you got to pour one out for the current Resident Evil fandom, who, if they weren't there back in the day, if their only experience of this series is the remakes and the new games, the absolute whiplash they're currently experiencing with Wesker. I actually came across a conversation the other day on another Discord, and it was from someone who's only just started playing the game since Remake 2, and their own admission was that they don't go on wikis, they don't really know the lore and great detail. They just play the games as they're presented in the order they've been coming out. And so they got really confused by Xeno, and rightly so. So bearing in mind, this person's timeline of events was Resident Evil 2 Remake, 3, played a bit of Village, but didn't really get a lot of the context because they didn't play 7. And then they played Remake 4 and then went on to Requiem. And they assumed, because they didn't know the lore, they didn't know the history, and the games do a terrible job of actually like properly dating themselves and establishing where they are, that Xeno was Wesker. It's the same voice actor, it's the same looking sort of person, and so feel for people like that who are now going to go from Wesker in Resident Evil 4 remake to Xeno, played by Craig Bernardowski, and then going back to Wesker. They're just going to not know what the fuck's going on.
Like, oh my god, there's a clone of Xeno in this game, and with no explanation of why.
But I do think that the games are doing a terrible job of actually contextualizing where they are in a very complex timeline now for newcomers.
Which isn't helped by the fact that things like the Resident Evil 2 remake and 3 remakes are somewhat stunted against the originals either, which adds to that universe building, like particularly 2. But you're also making a point, this is a good opportunity for them to expand Wesker and catch people up on who he is and what the connections was to the original game, like the events of the mansion incident, is going to have to be important to remaking Code Veronica. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, because we played Code Veronica on the pretense that we were like, oh my god, Wesker's back! Holy crap! Like that was a shocking reveal. Although they ruined that again, talking about stuff being revealed before the game came out. They did show it off beforehand. But yeah, you without any context, then Wesker becomes very hollow, and you won't understand that if they don't add to that in the Code Veronica remake.
I can't even remember if the remake of 4, if you've only just been playing the game since, let's just say you've only just been playing the games in the last 7-8 years, and you aren't one of these people who deep dives lore, you're not somebody who goes on Wikipedia pages and reads up about this shit, and you might even skim the files because you're only really bothered about them as like a horror experience, a modern horror experience, and I don't begrudge people for that. It's what people do now and stuff like that. I don't actually think 4 remake implies he's empowered through like a virus in any kind of way. He's just Ada's boss, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just a guy although he does turn up under weird pretenses, so you kind of know something's up, but you don't know again what that is. Yeah,
Doesn't have the red eyes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how the remake of Code Veronica realizes his abilities, and yeah, his conflict with Chris is going to be fascinating because without the context of the original, is that going to land as well?
you have to build that up again. And even to its credit and discredit, the original wasn't great in that either. Much we were talking about the island, Wesker just reappears, and until the Wesker's report thing was what really filled in the gaps, and that still came a year after the original release.
Am I right to think that this was effectively bringing him back from the dead?
In late 1999, when it became apparent that Wesker was back somehow, everyone was like, well, how? Because he either was impaled by the tyrant or was found dead in the triggering room. So you were like, he's dead. And obviously there's been arguments back and forth over the years of whether or not they should have killed him off at that point and if the intent was correct, and obviously essentially ignore that they killed him off at all and that he resurrected himself and escaped the mansion before it blew up, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But it was completely unexplained, and still in the game of Code Veronica, completely unexplained. Even in Code Veronica X, it's unexplained.
I was going to say, wasn't Wesker's report the only explanation that he actually gives?
Yes. And that can come out until March of 2001.
For the X release, for the PS2. In the UK, if you weren't on the internet, and bearing in mind 1999, most people weren't, and those that were only on very basic dial-up and things like that, I remember the first time we got any indication that Wesker was in the game, and I can't remember the magazine. Someone will correct me. It was either official Dreamcast magazine, which was still in its infancy at the time, or it was CVG when it was still a magazine. Had the first screenshot of Wesker. I think it was the cutscene where he first meets Chris and he's choked up against the wall, and like.
Yep.
It was mind blowing because we tried to imagine, dear listeners, a world without the internet where the first time you got any kind of indication that something was happening in a video game was a monthly magazine that you had to go to a shop and buy.
And even then, that monthly magazine's news was already out of date when they were making the magazine because, that information had, as far as the nascent internet was, it moved slower than it does now, but it still would be a few weeks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that advert was my draw for this game because I didn't have a Dreamcast. I kind of made my peace that I was going to miss out on it, and I had that magazine, whatever it was, and I saw that picture and I thought, "Fuck! Now I need to see what this game is about." A returning villain for like the first time ever, someone who was apparently dead. And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends at the time. We were debating if it really was Wesker, because I think it was a screenshot of just after Chris punches his sunglasses off. So even though it looked like him, he didn't have his signature shades on. So we were like, is it him? Is it not him? But yeah, as soon as we found out Wesker was back, that's like, shit, we need this game now.
It's so like we're so fucking ancient. Because I started to get the games on GameCube, and because again, you're right about Sean about access to the internet not being on it. I had no idea that Code Veronica actually existed, and just in a monthly magazine, they'd printed a little Resident Evil timeline of the games way before the release of 4, and it had Resident Evil Code Veronica, and I was like, what? I was really at the height of my intrigue and excitement for the game, and just wanting to kind of swallow up as much lore and history about the series as possible, and phoned up all these shops like, do you have Resident Evil Code Veronica? And yeah, finally managed to track it down and drove to buy it. Can I just quickly add, because you're asking about areas that we're most looking forward to, one of my highlights from Revelations 2, that approach to Alex Wesker's lair, the sound design and all the dolls and things, and just thinking about, the track suspended doll from the original, that's very much like, I think, is it Halloween? But also just the fact that when you go in, that whole Alfred and Alexia's residence with the dolls and the bats, I'm really looking forward. If they can pull something off that they did literally with Revelations 2, that's something I'd be excited about.
I was just going to say, going back to the Wesker thing, so I'm pretty sure having to hedge my bet on this was either very late November or very early December was when that reveal became apparent because of 1999, because advertising was being ramped up for the Dreamcast releases, both Code Veronica, plus also they had released the Biohazard 2 Value Plus pack in Japan, which came with the demo of Code Veronica. And they started doing really hardcore marketing, which is where they had the whole picture of Antarctica with the where is Biohazard going and so forth. And at that point as well, when they started doing that marketing, they started putting the headshots of characters related to that. I'm pretty sure Wesker is involved in those headshots. So they didn't even bother hiding it. They started really revealing that there was this character back. And everyone's like, what's going on? How's that possible? So, and this was all in the kind of November, December 99, January of 2000 lead up to the release. And what was supposed to be February, but it ended up releasing slightly earlier by about a week or two in January. So very, very different circumstances, but very much a mystery that, was not explained at all in the game. Was not explained at all even when they updated the game, and that took a 5th anniversary special Wesker's report document to explain.
I have a very, very vivid memory of loading up Wesker's report for the first time and being very apprehensive and excited, because I think I must have watched it before playing Code Veronica, and then watching it and then all the history, and then getting to that crucial moment. I unleashed the tyrant from its slumber or whatever and let it attack me. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's it. When you go, I injected the virus I obtained from Birkin in advance.
And I injected the virus from Birkin in advance. And it's like, well, what virus?
It's just Richard War at his very best.
I was going to say, can we just give a shout out to Richard War? Because that's half an hour narration he gives. It lasts almost half an hour, that whole thing. And he's wonderful. His take on Wesker, I know Sean spoke about this before, in comparison to maybe later incarnations, just that cool, calm, gone with Insidious, got almost slightly almost slight English tones, because it's almost mid-Atlantic accent he has. That was, I think, probably for me perhaps the last incarnation of Wesker that I truly loved.
It wouldn't surprise me if they remake Wesker's report as like an unlockable text document.
I think we can see that happening.
Like the Baker report and Grace's report.
I know Craig has said on a few of his streams that playing Xeno has given him a greater understanding, ironically, of how to play Wesker. They're fundamentally two different characters, but it's interesting to hear him say in a couple of his streams that Xeno's kind of informed him how to play Wesker better, and I'm now, with the greater context, kind of know what he must mean by that now.
Right, I think we should wrap that up. There's only so much we can talk about over a 4-minute trailer. And, we've done a sterling job there, gents. Thank you very much. We will, of course, keep our eyes on any new developments. I'm sure will come over the next few months leading up to release. We will dissect as trailers drop. But we do have time, thankfully, for this podcast edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
The ultimate test of Resident Evil knowledge returns. 100 podcasts later.
Jesus Christ. What fucking question is that?
I'm getting a big fat 0 this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to get any of these.
I'm not going to say anything because I know if I do, you will just change the answer or something. Like, you don't even know what the answers are.
Can I just ask, have you had all of these questions independently verified?
And still things don't quite go to plan.
You only have to probably get it right.
Welcome to Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Batman. Star Tyrants. George Trevor. Robbie the Pecker. Mr. Spencer. Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
All right, we've got 5 questions. It's not head-to-head. Batman and George, you missed a very exciting edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz in the last podcast where Sean and Rob went head-to-head against the format, and it didn't go down well.
Sean did not like it at all.
He did not like being quizzed without a pause. It was like, what's the answer to this question? And, I need time. But we're going back to the old format with relatively straightforward questions, I think. I'm expecting high points. So clear your desktops. You can open up Notepad. Here we go. Question number 1. In Remake 1, the 4 masks you can locate have features missing from their face. What features are they? What features from those 4 masks are missing? Question number 2. In which X-file from Resident Evil 2 does the author talk about his good old friend Mossberg? So which file talks about his good old friend Mossberg? Question number 3. In Remake 3, what is the name of the station that forms a key hub area for Jill? What's the name of that station? Question number 4. A welcome return of the Odd One Out round. This time we are doing an Odd One Out round with our friend and your friend, Ark Thompson. So which is the Odd One Out of these handguns? A, the Glock 17, B, the CZ75, C, the M8000 Cougar, D, the Nanbu 14 Custom, or E, the M93R? Which is the odd one out?
Can you repeat those, please?
I can, yes. Is it A, the Glock 17, B, the CZ75, C, the M8000 Cougar, D, the Nanbu 14 Custom, or E, the M93R? Which is the odd one out? You could probably work out what the question really is asking. And finally, question number 5, because we're talking about it, what colour is the famous glass eye, specifically the iris from Code Veronica? They're the 5 questions. Join us after this and we'll run through those answers.
There was
was a friendly but naive king who wed a very nasty queen. The king was loved, but the queen was feared.
Welcome back. Let's see how well everyone has done on Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So, in Remake 1, the 4 masks you locate have what features missing from their face? George, you're a massive Remake fan. Come on.
Oh God, I'm feeling the pressure now. Well, there's a mask without eyes, mask without mouth, mask without anything, like just mask without any of that stuff, and a mask without a nose. So eyes, mouth, nose, and then one that's got none of that.
Starstone?
I had this.
Romby?
Yeah, I have eyes, nose, mouth, all also.
Batman?
Yep, same.
Yes, correct. Points all round. Yeah. Nose, mouth, eyes, and there is the one without anything. Question number 2. In which X-File from Resident Evil 2 does the author talk about his old friend Mossberg? Romby, start with you for this one.
I have no idea. Zero
No.
recollection of this.
No.
Remember Mossberg, though. No concept.
Okay. Starstone?
It's David Ford talking about his inevitable suicide, and I think it is David's memo.
Okay. Batman?
Yeah, David's memo. Gonna have one last drink and then blow his brains out.
Mossberg, of course, being a shotgun.
George Trevor?
This was just out of reach. I had a real feeling I had something. I could almost picture reading this somewhere in that location where you've just mentioned you find the file. So those other guys I know, I'm pretty sure are right, but I couldn't get to it in the end. Too much of a fog.
No. Okay. Points to Stars Tyrant and Batman. Yes. David's memo, David's letter.
Interestingly, it is a Resident Evil 3 file as well.
Is it? Yeah, I didn't know that.
Find it in the dark room.
Yeah, I knew that I'd read it in the area, and that was what was confusing me because I was thinking 3 and 2 as well.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. I forgot that. Oh, very good. Very good. Kudos points there, Stars. Kudos points. Question 3 was in Remake 3, what was the name of the station that forms a key hub area for Jill? Batman, did we know?
Redstone Street Station.
George?
No idea. I wrote down Stagler.
Stagler. Romby?
I had Redstone.
Starstone?
Brutally honest, I had Redstone. I didn't write Redstone Street.
Oh, I'll give you Redstone Street Station. I'll let you have all that points there. Stars, Romby, and Batman. Well done. And question number 4 was the odd one out round. Which of these is the odd one out of the handguns? The Glock 17, the CZ75, the M8000 Cougar, the Nanbu 14 Custom, or the M93R? We're all big Survivor fans. How big? Ooh, Stars, you can go first. Which is the odd one out?
It's the M93R because that's Claire's gun in Code Veronica.
Romby?
Same answer. That's exactly what I was about to say. That's the auto pistol in Code Veronica.
Batman?
I didn't know this one. I thought it was the Cougar because I just didn't recognise that as a gun.
George Trevor?
No, any questions in relation to guns I'm never going to get. I had no idea.
Points to Stars and Rob. It is correct, yes. The odd one out was E, which is the Code Veronica gun. All the others, of course, are from Survivor, with A being handgun A, B being handgun B, C being handgun C, and D being handgun D.
Well, hang on. Doesn't Chris have a Glock 17 in Code Veronica?
Well, yeah, but yeah, that's a good point. But that is Ark's handgun A.
Yes, that's the thing. Handgun A is a Glock 17 handgun, but there is no handgun E.
And to be fair, his question was, what is the odd one out? And the context is the other 4 are in Survivor. That one gun is only in Code Veronica.
Fair enough. I'll let you off.
Thank you. And finally, question number 5. What colour is the iris in the glass eye object? George?
Well, it's blue, definitely blue. And also, can I just say, I'm appalled that this quiz relating to Code Veronica podcast has had no question where the answer is NTC 0394. So can I just get a point for saying
behave
NTC 0394, please?
It might come. We're going to be covering Code Veronica a lot. Batman.
Blue.
Romby.
Blue.
And stars.
Sacre bleu.
Sacre bleu.
And then he's like, no, it's a shade of teal.
Wow. Let's look at these scores. In last place, the 2 is George Trevor, 2 out of 5. Well done. In joint second is Ron B and Batman with 4 out of 5. And this podcast winner, I can barely hold my excitement back, with a full house, 5 out of 5. It stars Tyrant.
These fucking remakes, they do get me going, don't they? You know.
How ironic.
Congratulations.
How ironic. Out of all the episodes you've been on, it had to be this one.
This fucking series is going to be the death of me, innit?
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that. I must say, Nick, that was amongst your easier weeks.
Yeah, well, I thought it was brutal last time for you, so we'll tone it down. Will Sean be able to continue this winning streak? Find out next time when we'll have more questions. We are heading now towards the end of our first look at Resident Evil Veronica. It's weird, isn't it? Code Veronica remake, yes, but it's not.
It doesn't roll off the tongue terrifically well, does it?
No, it doesn't. I'm going to have to get used to this one.
I think you're battling against a severe muscle memory there.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least it'll make it easier to determine that you're not saying remake of blah all the time. At least you say Code Veronica or Veronica are completely different games.
Yes.
Just before we go as well, I give them props, actually, for briefly playing with REV on the trailer.
Oh, yeah, for 5.
Just to give people the idea that it's a follow-up to Remake 4. I know, obviously, they don't play it for very long, but they clearly do go for REV.
Yeah.
Well, it's also because it is actually shortened. The full title is really weird. It's like, what is it? Is it Biohazard RE Veronica?
Veronica, yeah, it's strange, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's actually still RE Veronica.
Coming up next, I think we're going to go back to our original plans. It's our Resident Evil Deadly Silence retrospective, 20 years since DS was released. So we're going to be looking back on that. We promise, hopefully, this time. Hopefully there shouldn't be a new game announced in between the next recording. So join us for that one. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And it's goodbye from me, Neptune.
Bye from me, Batman.
Bye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, George Trevor.
And goodbye from me, Robbie.